Good evening and welcome to the September 9th, 2021 Parks and Rec Commission special video meeting. I am Jody McCarthy, Parks and Recreation Commission Chair. In accordance with Proclamation 20-28.10 and the Governor's Extended Safe Start Order, tonight's Parks and Recreation Commission meeting is using video conferencing technology provided by Zoom. The Zoom video of this meeting is being recorded and will be broadcast live via Zoom and will be uploaded to the city's YouTube channel later this evening. City staff Jesse Bond, Ryan Daly, Paul West, Merrill Thomas Schott, Councilor Member Liaison Jake Jacobson, and consultant Steve Dew are participating in tonight's meeting remotely. Other public audience members are listening to the meeting by telephone or via the internet. Welcome to all and thank you for joining us tonight. Commissioners, please turn on your microphones. Will the city staff please call the roll?
Chair McCarthy.
Present.
Vice Chair Struck.
Present.
Commissioner Cohen.
Here.
Commissioner Birkenwald. Commissioner Westberg.
Here.
Commissioner Markson.
Here.
Commissioner Bursten.
Present.
Thank you.
Commissioners, before we start the business of tonight's meeting, I wanted to go over a few rules to help the meeting to run smoothly. If a commissioner has a question, please use the raise hand feature. I will do my best to recognize commissioners in the order in which hands are raised. Everyone will be asked to limit himself or herself to one question and to one clarifying question, if necessary, so that each commissioner has a chance to ask a question before a commissioner is given another chance to ask a question. Additionally, prior to speaking, please state your name for those listening in on the meeting. Tonight's agenda will not include in-person public appearances in accordance with Proclamation 20-28.11 and the Governor's Extended Safe Start Order. However, individuals wishing to speak live during the appearances portion of our meeting may do so by telephone or using the Zoom teleconferencing application, provided, however, they registered their desire to speak with the city admin staff by 4 p.m. today. Our city admin staff will call on you by name or telephone number when it is your turn to speak. This is the opportunity for anyone to speak to the Parks and Recreation Commission. All remarks will be addressed to the commission as a whole and not to individual commission members or staff members. If any person makes personal, impertinent, or slanderous remarks, or who becomes boisterous, threatening, or personally abusive while addressing the commission, I will request that the person leave the meeting. When it is your turn to address the commission, be sure to speak audibly and state your name for the record. Your comments will be limited to 3 minutes. I will provide you with a 30-second and 15-second warning when your time is about to expire. City admin staff, is there anyone who has signed up for appearances that wishes to address the commission?
We do. We have one person, Sue Stewart. I'm going to let her in now to speak. Just one sec. Sue, I can see your photo. If you want to turn your camera on and your mic.
There, is that better?
Great.
Great, thank you. Sue Stewart, President of Friends of Luther Burbank Park. Commissioners, first, thank you for your commitment to our parks. There must be a stop, though, to illegal digging in Upper Luther Burbank Park by unsupervised youth. The vandalism began in the summer of 2020. A full year ago, Kim Frappier tried to stop the pulling up of boundary stakes, the illegal digging, illegal trail building, and illegal jumps. In short, she tried to stop the vandalism. I testified to this commission in January of 2021, so that was 9 months ago. Rory Westberg and Jake Jacobson visited that very weekend, and I thank them. The upshot of that visit started the monthly teardown of an illegal jump more than 4 feet high, with the city realizing there was a significant legal liability. Now the park is monitored once a month. A crew tears down illegal jumps, but the boys build them back up immediately. I see in your document dated June 3rd that you will be designing the second Park Pros virtual meeting. It needs to be much more inclusive. The first one was hijacked by mountain bike youth and their parents, virtually every window. The city consultant even wrote up the suggestion to provide independent oversight for Snake Hill. There is no Mercer Island Park amenity called Snake Hill. They're vandalizing Upper Luther Burbank Park. In the last 6 months, the entrance trail is rutted and dangerous to walk on, and a new illegal trail follows the center ridge clear out to I-90 with a 25-foot drop-off. So now it covers about a 2-acre area. On August 24th and 25th, young riders took bad spills coming down the entry trail. Wendy Weicker was with me on the 25th and made the point that not only is the park unsafe, youth are defying a city regulation of no illegal digging, which is MICC 9.30.950. She stated that day that the essential priority for you is to remedy dangerous safety issues. Please prioritize this unsafe situation first on your docket. It was disappointing to read that bike skills in Upper Luther has a priority rating of 25 on tonight's paperwork, one of the very highest ratings. This is just not right.
30 seconds, Sue.
Friends of Luther Burbank Park has updated our website to include a drone video. I'll send it to you along with testimony of our July 20th City Council meeting. But I would urge each of you to come visit the park. We're happy to meet you.
15 seconds.
But just know the most common response is disbelief. The vandalism is bad, but the liability when a youngster gets hurt is even worse. Your attention is critical. Thank you.
Thank you.
No more appearances, Chair.
If there are no more appearances, we will move on to the first item of business. But before we get started, we'd like to recognize and welcome our new commissioner, Paulrnstein, to the Parks and Recreation Commission. Hopefully I got your name right. Commissioner Bursten, would you care to share a bit about why you are willing to join this commission and what's your favorite element in the Mercer Island Park system?
Oh, the tough question. First, it is Bursten, but I'm used to everybody pronouncing it any number of ways. I wanted to do this first and foremost to give back to Mercer Island, where we've lived now for about 25 years, I believe. And we've enjoyed so much of the different parks and the recreational opportunities that exist here. So glad to be here and really looking forward to with everyone making a big impact in where we live. Probably my favorite feature would have to be Pioneer Park, which is near where I live. I'm in the park every day. I see all sorts of animals, wild and domestic, people, wild and domestic, but it's just such a treasure for the island. And it's just amazing to be able to hike through there every day in all weather and all times.
You're right. Thank you so much. I'll try and remember with your last name. I've written it for myself phonetically now. All right. So the first item of business is to review and consider approving the minutes from the July 1st, 2021 meeting. Commissioners, may I have a motion to approve the minutes of the July 1st, 2021 meeting, please?
This is Don Cohen. I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
This is Rory Westberg. I will second.
All right, there's a second. Commissioners, please turn on your microphones. If we have the roll, please.
Chair McCarthy,
Aye.
Vice Chair Strzok,
Aye.
Commissioner Cohen,
Aye.
Commissioner Birkenwald, Commissioner Westberg,
Aye.
Commissioner Markson,
Aye.
Commissioner Burstein.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion passes and the minutes are approved. Okay, the second item of business is the Luther Burbank docks and adjacent waterfront 30% design review. And we welcome Ryan Daly.
Hey, I'm blown away by that introduction. Thank you, Chair. I see Peter laughing off to the side, so I appreciate that. But yes, Paul West is also on this call, so I may ask him to turn his video on as well. But we are really just handing this over to the commission and recommending that the Luther Burbank Dock Subcommittee be reinstated. So Paul, do you have anything to add there?
I think that pretty much sums it up. We have a 30% design that's coming momentarily, and it's going to be fairly detailed and require some attention with people who are familiar with the project. So that's the thinking behind having the subcommittee reconvene.
And the subcommittee again before was, remind me, it was Peter was the chair.
That's correct. Peter was the chair. Commissioner Westberg was the, and Commissioner Gualtieri were the other two members.
I see that Rory, you have your hand up.
I do. I have just a question for clarification for Paul. So the immediate action before the commission will be a motion to, I guess, reestablish this committee and confirm the membership. But Paul, I wonder if you could just address briefly, we formed the committee, what's the schedule then? There was some indication in the staff report that there's a degree of urgency here in terms of getting a 30% design approved in time for the 2022 grant grant award season. So we establish the committee, we take a look at the committee takes a look at the 30% design, then what?
Yeah, I would imagine the committee would spend maybe 2 to 3 meetings on the 30% design and then make a recommendation to the full commission, which would probably be at the commission's November meeting.
Okay.
If the commission is ready at that November meeting, then they could make a recommendation to city council at that point, or if it goes to December, there'd be a recommendation to council for council's January meeting. It's somewhere in there. We need to apply for grants we need to, letter of intent is like due in February and the full grant applications due in like May. So it comes pretty quickly next year.
Okay, so the commission then could anticipate having this in front of them probably no later than November.
I would hope so.
Okay, thank you.
And Don, you have a question or a comment?
Yes. Don Cohen, a comment. And Ryan Daly shared with you an exchange that we had. And I just for purposes of having it on the record, I just wanted to take a half a minute just to comment on it, which was, this wasn't about Lynn Gualtieri because she's been a very dedicated member of the commission, but I raised the question of whether she gave lessons for paddle boarding or kayaking for a fee, as I remembered that she does at the tennis courts at Homestead, I think. And Ryan clarified that she doesn't, because my only concern was if she did, I wanted to at least have the commission consider whether it was appropriate to have her as an actual member of the subcommittee. And I guess just for the future, those kinds of issues may or may not come up, and I don't think we're establishing any set rule. We would address those if they required addressing later on. So I'm satisfied with where we are on that, and I would intend to vote in favor of a motion to reestablish the subcommittee.
Great, thanks, Don. So just to clarify for everybody who's listening, so the Luther Burbank Dock Subcommittee before was Peter Struck was the chair, and then Rory Westberg and Lynn Gualtieri were on that subcommittee. And Lynn has since finished her time on the Parks Commission, but she has agreed to come back and be a participant in the subcommittee, which is allowed under our bylaws to have others, not just commission members. And we thought it was beneficial because of the urgency of this to have somebody who has the background to be able to be participating in those meetings. Does anybody have any other thoughts or comments that they want to make? If not, then I think, should we go, do we need to have a motion? Okay, so did somebody make the wording of the motion or exactly, or should I try to make the wording of the motion? We'll just recommend that we reconvene the Luther Burbank Dock Subcommittee with the original members to go over for the 30% design review. And then we'll have a roll call, please.
Was that motion
Oh,
seconded?
sorry.
You may
Sorry.
need a second, so I second the motion.
Okay, thank you, Rory. I got ahead of myself. Now,
Chair, this Don Cohen, I'm sorry. So I think, did you say recommend reestablishing it? I think the motion
to
is
reconvene.
reconvene.
Yeah, sorry.
Because we're not recommending it to anybody.
Exactly. Thank you. We are reconvening the Luther Burbank Subcommittee with the original members.
Thanks.
And-
We'll call the roll. Chair McCarthy,
I,
Vice Chair Struck,
Aye.
Commissioner Cohen,
Aye.
Commissioner Birkenwald, Commissioner Westberg,
Aye.
Commissioner Markson,
Aye.
Commissioner Burstein.
Aye.
Thank you.
all right, so that motion has passed. And now we are on to our third item of business, and which is the pros plan, draft of goals and objectives, the capital facilities project list, and input on September 28th virtual public open house. And for this, we welcome City Manager Jesse Bond and consultant Steve Dew.
Thank you very much, Chair McCarthy, and welcome Commissioner Burstein. Did I say that remotely?
Absolutely. Good job. Thank
All
you.
right. Well, I will just tell you for background, I am the city manager. I am leading the pros plan update project for a variety of reasons. One, I used to be the parks director, and two, our Parks and Recreation Department was hit pretty hard with restructuring and layoffs last year. So that's why I'm here. I think the staff just about fired me today though, because I made so many technical mistakes. So anyway, welcome. And I should mention City Council member Jake Jacobson is here. And if this wasn't explained yet, he's the liaison to the City Council, and Councilmember Jacobson will play a key role in the pros plan handoff to the council, which will be sometime in January, I anticipate. Anyway, the planning for the pros plan is supported by a consultant, Steve Dew, and Conservation Techniques. And Steve's going to kick off. He's got some PowerPoint slides. I'll tag in on chapter 4, and then we'll finish off with a public meeting discussion. Steve.
All right, thank you. Good evening, commissioners. I am launching a PowerPoint, so bear with me for a moment as I get this up and running. And hopefully, can I see a head nod to see that this is working correctly? Great. Okay. Yes, as Jesse mentioned, just want to give you a real quick update on where we are in the project before we dive into a lot of the meat of tonight's discussion, which is really focused around goals and objectives. And then a little bit after that, a discussion about the upcoming virtual public meeting that's slated to happen at the end of September. So in terms of just some front end information, just to give you a sense of kind of where we are with the project,
where we are with the second round survey. I'm just offering you some updates by way of this quick PowerPoint. So as you remember, we've spent several sessions going over the design of a survey over the last several months. We finally were in a position to launch that survey at the end of August. And as a reminder, again, it was a two-part survey in that it went out to a random sample of households, 2,500 households, as a mail survey, a print survey. Those people could also take the survey online with a unique QR code and URL. So that data set was separate from the online only collector, which was available for everyone else in the community to take part in and provide feedback. So to date, and since the survey is still ongoing, we've collected just over 1,100 responses, which is phenomenal for 3 weeks worth of survey collection. You can see on screen how that breaks down between the mail statistical version and the online only. So the mail version has just about 17% response rate, so a little over 400 returns out of 2,500. So again, very strong response for that mail survey. Mail surveys are tapering off, so I anticipate that over the next couple of days, we're only going to see a small increase in that number. But the online only version remains strong and is continuing to be promoted via the Let's Talk page, social media, and other methods. So that number might increase a little bit more dramatically over the next week. We intend to close the survey next Friday night or early in the morning on Saturday. And then the intent is to utilize that survey data in part as a springboard to have the conversation with the community about where to go from here and tie some of that data back into the virtual public meeting that we'll discuss later tonight. In all, we'll put together a survey summary memo, much like we did for the first one, and the target for that is end of September. So we'll be crunching really hard through data analytics the second half of the month, and we're looking for some good information. I see a hand raised.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Peter Struck. Just on the summary memo, will you have time to kind of compare and contrast with the first survey?
We will have that ability to do it, and the question is maybe when will it be? Will it be before or after the virtual public meeting? It'll likely be more of a data analysis that happens toward the end of the month or right around the beginning of the next month, just because of the compression in the schedule right now. But we will be looking at the differences, not only in the demographic subsets between the two data sets, but also looking at the translation in data or responses. So a couple questions that we've put in are either similar to the first survey, so we can see a trend in data from last year, or are built around some of the priorities from the first survey to retest them to see if things shuffle out a little bit different. So we will be looking at that. It's just a matter of how deeply we get into it before the end of the month.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad to hear that, because I think it's really important to be able to look at the two data sets and as you indicate, see what we can glean, over time. Thank you.
Sure thing.
Steve,
Right.
if I could cut in again, Jesse Bond, I will just mention for our new commissioners, you may have picked this up. We did run a survey early on in the process, pre-pandemic. We decided to do a second one, essentially to build on the first survey and just to test to see if anything had changed, given that everything we've been through.
So regardless, we've got a very strong sample of data coming to us, and I look forward to sharing it with the commission here in the next several weeks. Just again, to kind of give you a quick walkthrough again of where we are and where we're going with the project. I know we've been working through this for many, many months, and I just wanted to offer a real quick, simple graphic to just illustrate kind of the trajectory that we're on. So the project's been going on for about 2 years almost, on and off really. So some of the early work such as reviewing site conditions and doing some baseline data analysis, trends. That occurred a long time ago, still solid baseline data that we're using for the plan. Community engagement's been ongoing and it's really ramped up since springtime this year. And again, we're moving through the second survey now, the second virtual public meeting in a few weeks from now. That data and the analysis really is what we use to build our needs assessment for the overall PROS plan. And that needs assessment is segmented for the document, for the plan, by chapters. And the chapters are like parks and active use areas and open space and conservation, recreation, etc. So we do a thematic approach based on the chapters using the data and the community feedback that we're getting throughout the course of the project. The gold line represents kind of where we are today. And we're in the process of still digesting feedback from the community through the needs assessment, but we're also starting to turn our attention toward strategies, priorities, goals, and again, a lot of tonight's discussion will be around goals, as well as capital planning and the project list, which we've also talked about in past sessions. So as we move forward in time over the next 2 months, really, it'll be on our team to craft and compile a full comprehensive document that will be turned back over to the commission for review and consideration. The intent is that by the November meeting, you have a full comprehensive version for review and discussion. And then starting in December, January, it's really a process of kind of formalizing a review and approval, and then ultimately moving forward to City Council for their review and approval in January and February. The ultimate target is a completion of end of February or a little bit into March to meet the state's deadline, the Recreation and Conservation Office deadline, which we should be on track for. In terms of some of the content that's already mostly compiled or near final, you can see that several major sections are compiled and in kind of final cleanup review with staff right now. We have several sections in draft and in progress, in part because we're still waiting for that public data to come to us. But a lot of the front end documentation, such as, introduction to the plan, purpose of the plan, community profile, community engagement process, some of those things are pretty well crafted, as well as a discussion of inventory and classifications for your park system. A lot of the back end details that are part of the appendices that include all of the site observations from the site visits, recreation trends, history about the city's program and park system, as well as chapters on open space and recreation. So the pending sections, as you can see at the bottom, again, goals and objectives, tonight's discussion, and then some more of the kind of the core meat sections that we're still working through, like parks, trails, and operations and sustainability. And then again, just in terms of where we're going from here, is I kind of already talked to this, but in October's session, our goal is to provide you kind of a clean version of those front end chapters in the format that they will look in the PROS plan as a document. So you can start to review that so you're not overwhelmed when you get the full document in November, because you would have already seen maybe a third of the document by then, as well as a continuation of the discussion about capital projects. So that's October. In November, full composite draft will take 2 months to go through and digest and comment on that. It'll turn back to our team for final edits and cleanup before going to City Council, and then again, City Council early next year. And with that, I'll take any questions or comments before I turn it back to Jesse, if there are any. Jesse?
All right, onward. Well, commissioners, we are at the moment where we are getting into the meat and potatoes of the plan. Tonight, we're going to take a deep dive into chapter 4. And I know you might be wondering, Jesse, why did you send me chapter 4? We haven't seen chapters 1 through 3 yet. They're coming. Chapter 4, and then what will ultimately be your capital facilities chapters are really the core policy components of the plan, which is why we're doing an early look at chapter 4. Some of the other chapters I would describe as background. Many of them we have to include to meet the requirements of the state granting agency. In fact, I shared with a couple of you today, if we didn't have those requirements, I think we would compact the plan and maybe scrub some chapters. But anyway, so tonight we're working on chapter 4. This is your first review of the goals chapter, and we'll be taking feedback, hopefully making some decisions tonight, and then coming back for another look at your November 4th meeting. I also wanted to mention that this goals chapter is going to the Arts Council this month and the Open Space Conservancy Trust. In fact, we will be talking with both of those boards about identifying a representative to join your Parks and Rec Commission meetings when the pros plan is being discussed for the remainder of the year. We don't have the budget, or I think the time, to have a whole bunch of joint meetings. So this is our way to ensure that the Arts Council and the Trust are involved in final decisions regarding the plan. Next slide, Steve, and I've just got a few before we switch over to discussion. I had some questions about the goals, objectives, and action items, and I think we should work on the definitions in the chapter. So the goal, I think there are 8 of them, generally describes the overarching direction for the parks and recreation system. So the big picture stuff. The objectives takes it down one step and really should describe an outcome or means to achieve or support that goal. The objectives, and I'll talk more about this in a minute, may be broad, and there's a typo there, or they may be very specific. From there, once we get the goals and objectives lined out, you'll see action items loaded up into your 6-year CIP, or eventually into the city work plan. And I'll try to point out some examples of this as we go through chapter 4. Next slide. Thank you, Steve. So I was asked today, some of the objectives are aspirational, some are specific, and they can be both. So in some cases, the goals were written broadly just to convey a desire or a theme, and sometimes because trying to distill them down into very specific, tangible things is really tough. For example, the goals around volunteers or recreation programs, the objectives, those are a little challenging to distill. And others you probably noticed are very specific. What I wanted to share as we head into this discussion tonight is we can turn the knob either direction, and the staff are looking for feedback from you. If you feel that the objective needs to be a lot more specific, then let's have that discussion. Alternatively, if it's too specific and you want to zoom out, we can do that as well. Next slide, please. And speaking of that, this is really, the questions that I've used to evaluate the draft goals and objectives, and some things I wanted to toss your way. Are they understandable? If a community member picked up this document, they have a general understanding of the goals and objectives. If not, we need to make a revision. One of the questions that Steve asked after the staff, I should mention that Steve drafted the initial goals chapter, and then the staff got a hold of it, and I think it doubled in size at least. So Steve was asking me, Jesse, do you think there's too many objectives? I think we could be pushing the upper limit, to be honest with you, Parks and Rec Commission. This objective set is generally to describe work that should be completed or desires we have over the next 6 to 10 years. So let's take a look at that. And also, is there something missing? One of the things I've asked the staff, right? This document should help guide your work. Is it doing that? And we've had probably 4 or 5 runs through this set at this point. The staff are generally pleased with where it landed. So be thinking about the staff as you as we get into the discussion. And then I will also remind you, big picture, we want a goals and objectives set that guides board decisions and commission decisions, recommendations, I should say, the Arts Council, the Trust, and of course the Parks and Rec Commission, and also helps inform future city council decisions. So again, if we need to make it more specific, revise, That's where we're headed this evening. So what I will suggest, I did receive comments and suggestions from 2 commissioners ahead of the meeting. Thank you to Vice Chair Struck and Commissioner Cohen. I think we have somewhere in the order of magnitude of maybe 50. And so, but the good news is I think they've identified some really key policy discussions. So what I'd like to suggest is we go through the matrix that was shared twice today. I apologize. The first one that went out was missing some of Commissioner Cohen's comments. What we need to do this evening is walk through that document. I've talked with Chair McCarthy. There's some discussion areas, and then I need consensus from the commission, probably a thumbs up, thumbs down process. So if a majority of you support the change, it will go forward. If there's no support, we'll take it out. And if we're not sure, there's a whole section on trails that I think the staff needs to go spend some more time on. We'll bring it back to you for November 4th. Does that all sound like we're going to have a long meeting? Okay. I am going to share my screen, and I'm sorry, there's going to be a lot of words. Feel free to pull the document up on your end. It's version 2 that was sent right before the meeting. Well, I thought I was going to share my screen. Let's see here. Okay. Oh, Commissioner Westberg has his hand up.
Yeah, Jesse, I just have a clarifying question. The matrix reflects comments, the written comments from 2 commissioners, correct, as well as adjustments from staff. I didn't realize you were looking for written comments for this meeting, so I didn't provide any, but I will be happy to do that if sort of you're still open to comments at this point, if we're going to see this again next month. So can you kind of explain where we are with that?
I should have mentioned that, and for the future, we'll be more clear about sending advance comments. We didn't ask for them this time. So I've got the matrix in order, goal by goal. So I think what we'll do, we'll work through the matrix, and then I'll ask, are there any other comments, questions, and suggestions on like goal 1, for example? That way we can go in order if that works for everyone. And some of your comments will probably overlap with those that were shared by your colleagues. Okay. Should we dive in? Good. All right. So Commissioner Vice Chair Struck, excuse me, he made a comment about the goals and objectives description in the text, and I had a chance to share with him today that I wasn't really thrilled with the definition, but by the time the document went out, I had run out of creative brain space. So I do think the use of the word measurable to describe objectives is problematic because some of the objectives are pretty broad. So what you see here, can everyone see this on the screen? The way this matrix is laid out is, this is the comment from the commissioner. This is the reference in the text that you received, the original. And if I have included, or one of the staff has included a revision, it's here. Otherwise, I've just added some notes. And I will let you read that. Basically, this is changing the way we described the goals and objectives.
And Commissioner Struck has a comment or a question.
Yeah, so since this is mine, just real quickly on the proposed revision, I'm fine with the way it has been revised. I think it does create more clarity. One, I guess, suggestion I might have would be actually under recommendations, where it says recommendations are specific actions. I don't know if this is double counting, but I would say recommendations are specific, measurable actions. I just think that the more we can kind of create accountability, the better off we are. So, but thank you for that.
Specific.
Chair Westberg? or
No
sorry,
longer chair.
Commissioner. Westberg. Oh, I wish that it wasn't true.
I agree with Commissioner Struck in terms of the change to the definition of an objective. I'm one of those people that one of my broad comments about the whole product was that the objectives were a hodgepodge of broad statements of policy and specific action items, and I would like to see them made more consistent so that the document would present easier and read easier to general member of the public who had not been involved in its preparation. That's an overarching statement. I also have a question with regard to this, that recommendations are the specific measurable actions. So that's really where the rubber meets the road in the plan. And yet it seems to me they're kind of buried in the document, that someone would have to really know where to go look to see, well, okay, for this objective, what does this plan actually call for us to do? And you'd have to know where to go, the specific capital improvement item or within the needs assessment, you'd have to know where to go to ferret that out. And I did notice that the prior plan had a chapter entitled Action Plan. It wasn't very detailed, but I'm wondering if we need something like that to show how we're going from the goal to a more detailed objective to what actually we envision we're going to try to accomplish in the 6 to 10 year time period, well, the 6-year time period this plan would address.
Just for context, you're seeing chapter 4 without the context of the rest of the plan. It will drive to action items and the CIP. Some of the objectives are broad by design. We maybe don't have a specific action item yet, but they tell a story about what we desire, and there's further work to be done. Many of them will go to the city council, and the city council will then, once the plan's adopted, consider if a work plan item needs to be created and when. Steve, did you want to say anything about flow of the plan?
Yeah, so the other point I would add is that the document will have an implementation section or chapter that will incorporate the project list, the capital project. And prior to seeing what the project list is, as shown in the document, there'll be text to highlight those key project areas that came out through the whole process, whether it's renovations of docks or playgrounds or acquisitions, whatever those core areas are, and then how they relate to the project list. So there is that connection between the objectives that are stated here and then later the specific implementation actions and recommendations. The other piece I would add is that, again, some of these objectives are a little, maybe loose isn't the right term, but higher in focus in the sense that this plan document is more akin to a strategic higher level plan rather than a work plan. So the city staff will take this document to craft annual, biennial work plans and budget actions built around trying to meet the objectives and the recommendations in the document.
Okay, Vice Chair Struck.
Yes, thank you. So Steve, from what you just said, I'm just trying to understand. So this implementation section, would it be such that you would actually map out and say, well, for objective, number 10 objective under goal 3, that implementation says there's these specific projects, or how is that going to be mapped out? Because I think we're Commissioner Westberg brings up an excellent point of for somebody that's in the community that's just trying to follow this and so forth. I think the easier we can make the roadmap, the better off, it'll be a more transparent and understandable document.
Yeah, it's a good question. We haven't done that level of specificity in relating objectives to specific projects, because any individual project will likely hit, you know, a large number of objectives, because the objectives include things like community engagement and volunteerism and funding, et cetera. So I think there's a chance to pull together a matrix that looks at that, and maybe it's something we can talk about with staff.
Councilmember Jacobson, you have a comment, question?
Yes, I wanted to sort of second Peter's, what Peter and Rory have just said. And looking ahead as the city council, it would be helpful to us to know what things need to be in a work plan, or what things we should expect the staff to put in a work plan to order our lives. And so making it clear what's necessary to get the rubber on the road will certainly be helpful in the downstream process, at least to this city council person. I believe my colleagues, I speak for my colleagues in that regard as well, and will also serve to better allow us to exercise our monitoring function of city operations, which we do in order to be able to give policy to the city manager.
Thank you. All right, so did you get all that down, Jesse?
I did. So I will also note with both documents, both kind of tools and development, this layer will have to come later. So until this kind of chapter is set in the Capitol facility, you know, you can see where I'm going with this.
Mhm.
So I've heard the requests, and we'll think about how best to deploy it. I will ask then Chair McCarthy is, I've got on the screen here a proposed revision along with friendly amendments from Vice Chair Struck. I do not recommend we do this by motion. We'll be here all night. At this point, it's a thumbs up process if you support this revision.
Mhm. Yeah, all right. Let's see. Well, I'm gonna do it this way. Does anybody have a problem with this revised statement? Put up your hand. Okay, now we're gonna move on to the next one.
Okay. All right. So this one is a just a high level, well, let's see. Okay, this was Commissioner Cohen's comment about the order of the goals. It's interesting, as we were revising them, I was thinking the same thing. Should we reorder them based on some sort of priority? And what I landed on is each of the goals has really important objectives. So I left them in the order that they were in, starting with community engagement. This does not matter a lot to me. So it's really whatever the pleasure of the Parks Commission is.
Well, just as a Parks and Rec Commission person, I think that 1.4 should actually be 1.1 and say support the Parks and Rec Commission as a forum for public discussion of parks and recreation issues, and have that be the first of the objectives in that list. Since it's all supposed to like kind of flow here to flow out. Does that make sense?
That would be reordering the objectives under goal number 1.
Exactly.
Okay. Did you want to continue discussion, or did you want to get direction?
Yeah, so I see that Commissioner Cohen has a comment.
Don Code, yeah, my comment was not so much on the internal order, but it was just that reading it for the first time, see, okay, here's our number 1 goal. Support community engagement and collaborative partnerships. That didn't grab me. That was more a way that you accomplish the second part of that goal. But so again, I don't feel real strongly about it, but just as a lay reader, it struck me that the first goal ought to be something like, something like goal 2, or something like the end of goal 1 or something. I don't know. I don't have any specific ideas, but that's why I reacted that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Commissioner Westberg.
So Jesse, were you, you mentioned that you hadn't really thought about the order, you just provided them the way you had got them. Are you looking for feedback from the commission with regard to specific changes in the order, or a more general agreement on our part that those could be looked at and change, and the order could be changed to reflect more what staff felt were the important issues?
Yeah, so in fairness, I did contemplate the order. As you read through the objectives, I think each of the goals, really has some objectives that are very important. And I think we led our previous PROS plan with a different goal, but some of it was around community engagement. So I'm open if you want to move goal 2 and make it number 1. If you don't feel strongly that there is nothing implied by the order of the goals. So just because goal number 1 is goal number 1, perhaps a reader may interpret it that way. I can tell you the way they were drafted, it was not intended to be an order of importance.
To me, when I'm looking at it, it sort of builds out from the people, and because if there's no people going to the parks, then they're not really parks anymore. I don't know. So to me, it builds out and it makes sense, but I could also see it being flipped and put all of the like park specific and arts and cultural stuff at the front as well, and then have the more people things at the back. Commissioner Westberg, do you have something to add?
I do, thanks. And I keep forgetting to mute my mic. I agree with Commissioner Cohen that to me, the goal 2 is sort of foundational.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's what we're about. It's providing a safe and varied park system that meets community needs. And how we do that is reflected in any number of the other goals, through community engagement, through a robust maintenance program, through partnerships, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of see, I put that front and center personally. I just see that
Yeah.
as foundational to what it is we're all about.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So just flip those 2 and the rest can be in the order that they're in. Is that what you're thinking, Rory?
I hadn't really thought about the order, frankly, until this discussion came up. I was more looking at the content.
Mm-hmm.
But since we broached this topic, I certainly think that goal 2 should be should lead off that section.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Vice Chair Struck.
Thank you. Yeah, I would agree with Commissioners Cohen and Westberg that goal number 2. To Rory's point, I hadn't really thought probably as much as I should have about kind of this order and so forth. But as I'm sitting here right now, I just said, well, if I had to pick one goal to explain, what this plan was about, I think goal 2 says it all, or says it best. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, if anybody has an issue, Commissioner Burstein.
One thing that I think might be missing is we just dive directly into the goals without summarizing them beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
And that serves 2 purposes. It kind of lays out the direction of this document and a better ability to navigate through it. And then within that, it's also easy to mitigate concerns by saying this is in priority order or this is not in priority order.
Mm-hmm. Is there going to be something like that in this chapter, like before chapter 4, and chapter 4 is just an expansion of that? Or would, because I think that makes sense what you're saying, Paul, and
I guess my question then, Commissioner Burstein, are you asking for like a brief description ahead of each individual goal, describing what it encompasses?
No, actually, so if
Oh.
you, the page before where it says goals and objectives, and you kind of give the background of how these were established, before going into the individual goals, you can also bulletize a list right there in summary. So if we are going with goal number 2 as the first one, say, here are the goals. And the first bullet is plan for and develop parks and recreation system. And then continue with the 4 goals. And then in this section, be able then to go in depth to what are the objectives within each of those individual goals.
Got it.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
glad you asked, because I heard something differently the first time. That's easy.
It's like a crib sheet for the chapter.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that idea as well. Commissioner Cohen?
Yes, Don Cohen. If I was going to reorder these goals, I would do goal 2 through goal 7, then followed by goal 1, and then goal 8. So you're saying, here's all the important stuff. We're going to have a great park system. We're going to do environmentally friendly things. We're going to have great arts. We're going to do this and that. Then we're going to engage with the community and partnerships. And finally, we're going to do this in an administratively and financially responsible way. I don't know. That's, I don't feel strongly about it, but that is one potential flow.
Yeah. Yep, Rory's giving it a thumbs up. How does everybody else feel? Sarah, have you got anything that you'd like to contribute? Thumbs up, thumbs down?
I'm listening and I don't disagree with anything anyone said.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Chair McCarthy, based on what Commissioner Cohen just put on the table, I've heard advance goal 2 through 7 in order. Goal 1 to the 7 spot, and then keep 8 at the end.
Yep, I like it. I think that gives a better flow. And I also really like having the bullets at the beginning of it. All right.
All right. Okay. This next one, Commissioner Struck. Good question. You must have been eavesdropping on our staff conversations behind the scenes. So he's asking about the goal that references stakeholders, park and facility users. I'll tell you that we've gone back and forth as staff. I proposed a revision just to zoom out. And the revision now says involve the community in system-wide planning and site design, taking out the words stakeholders and park and facility users. It would be really hard to define stakeholders. I will say though, to counter what I just said, let's take a project, for example. Let's pretend we're replacing a backstop at a baseball field or softball field. The reason that park and facility users was added was to emphasize that there are people that have a great interest in that backstop replacement, and we want to make sure we're reaching them specifically as key users. I don't think it matters. I know for some of you that have been around a long time, you can probably recall a number of projects and times like the bug group athletic fields. Certainly we have a great discussion going on right now with the Upper Luther bike skills area. So I proposed a more general statement here. I also took out the words diverse and changed it to use a variety of communication tools and engagement strategies to solicit community input.
I like that. I feel like it's nice and streamlined. Does anybody else have any comments, or should we move on? Commissioner Cohen?
I would go back partly to what was on there. I would say involve the community, including park and facility users, because otherwise you're going to hear the baseball people or the Luther Burbank people say, hey, wait a minute, we don't care. We want the community, but we know we're part of it, but we want to have our voice heard. So I guess unless there's something really negative about that, it could only be that we'd be inviting dissent, but that's transparency, I guess, so.
Mhm.
just a
So,
thought.
yeah, so involve the community, including park and facility users. That's what you're suggesting?
Yeah, surrounded by commas.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't feel strongly about it, but
Commissioner Struck, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I hear where Commissioner Cohen's coming from, but then I kind of think, well, if we're going to kind of mention park and facility users, then I kind of start thinking and saying, well, what other quote unquote stakeholders should we be, so it's kind of like you just kind of stay very general community, or you start kind of well, we can get a laundry list. And again, I don't feel super strong, but I almost at this point would kind of go back to the more generic, just community, and understand that, there's a lot of subsets of interest groups, et cetera, under that, depending on the project.
that convinced me, so I'll take back my comment.
All right, so we're gonna take out, and we'll say community, period. Perfect. Okay, so let's go on to the next one.
All right, this is where Commissioner Struck started to call me out on the aspirational versus focused. So the objective regarding partnerships, and earlier versions of this document, we had partnerships all over the place. So what we tried to do is roll it all up into one objective statement. It is aspirational by design. I think where we would get into specific action items would probably be in the implementation chapter or another action item. I did suggest that we put a stronger word in, not just identify, but and implement, indicating that there's an action, potential action to be taken for partnerships, and of course, open to other suggested changes.
Commissioner Cohen?
No, sorry, I forgot to put my thing down.
Oh, okay. Commissioner Westberg?
I agree with Jesse's idea there to change the opening verb, and the reason I put my hand is as a general comment throughout the document, throughout the list of objectives, I would avoid using words like consider, enhance, strive, etc., because they're too vague and it really sets the bar too low.
Okay, I think that's a good comment. Vice Chair Struck?
Yes, thank you. Just to tag on to what Commissioner Westberg said, I agree that using those verbs like strive and enhance just don't do a lot for me. I think they're too vague. However, I do like the suggested edits that the staff proposed on the revision on this one. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so let's go on to the next one.
Oops. Okay, this one, Commissioner Cohen. This is section 1.6, we're in goal 1. So the goal says understand recreation trends, park use patterns, and park user needs, and we've dropped in objective analytical tools, statistical surveys, customer surveys, and user counts. So Commissioner Cohen, I think what you're saying here is give yourself a little flexibility. Not everything has to come from a data set. I attempted a revision and other means such as customer feedback and suggestions. Not my best staff work on the fly. I'm open to other feedback, or perhaps I misinterpreted the comment.
Commissioner Cohen?
I guess as I'm okay with your change, but now as I look at it, is the word customer in those two places really the right word?
Yeah.
Or not? I'll ask the city manager if that is the best word or not.
Customer. What word did you, is there a word that you used in the recreation reset strategy? Did you use patron or user? Does anyone recall?
Jesse, this is Ryan Daly. Primarily, we use the word patron.
Okay. Vice Chair Struck.
Yeah, the word that came to mind for me was community feedback and suggestions.
That makes sense. Commissioner Burstein.
The one that I was thinking of was citizen. I don't know if we've used that before.
Yeah, I will just tell you, generally, we are trying to stop using the word citizen. It has some negative connotations. So we've used, citywide, we're trying to use community member instead.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but thank you. I auto type citizen all the time, so I'm having to retrain my habit.
Commissioner Westberg.
Not to throw a monkey wrench in the works, but it seems to me that this could be stated quite simply by saying track recreation trends, park use patterns, and park user needs, period. You don't need to say how you're going to do it. Not at this point.
Yep, it's true. I don't feel like that's a monkey wrench. I think that's streamlining. Personally.
I actually like the change. This is something that we've struggled with when we get too prescriptive. I'm not sure it serves what we're really trying to say.
I had the same thoughts.
Perfect. Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah.
So we would add the word track and we would delete everything I have highlighted in gray, I believe.
Yep.
Right? Track
Yep.
Yep.
Yes, correct. Sorry.
All right.
Okay, Commissioner Struck.
Yeah, so I concur with the change, but I'm wondering, should we say for the verb understand and evaluate, or something more than just kind of understand?
Oh,
I don't think it understands in it anymore. It's just track recreation trends, park use.
Oh, okay, my mistake.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, let's go on to the
And
next
then
one.
track and evaluate.
oh,
Yeah.
I see. Track.
Yeah, thank you. Perfect.
Okay.
Okay, next one. Look, we're on to 2 now. Woohoo, we're going through these like crazy.
All right, on to goal 2, which will become goal 1. Commissioner or Vice Chair Struck, excuse me. We supported your recommendation. This is around retaining publicly owned park and open spaces in perpetuity. Wow. This item, permanent preservation of park space, was identified as a goal by the council in 2020. We took it off the list, not because it is not important, but because the pandemic happened and we couldn't get to it. I fully anticipate that, first of all, the council would, and Jake can nod his head, that the council will want to see this goal. And if we don't put it in here, they will add it. And then they will probably put something on the work item, the work plan, if not in 2022 and 2023, to figure out how we do this in a more meaningful way, which is why I was a little loose in my, conservation easement zoning changes. The one thing I was struggling about was the request to measure progress annually. I guess it could involve reporting on the work that's being done. Ultimately, the work plan item, though, has to be blessed by the council. So I think there's council support for this objective, and this was my attempt at a revision. Happy to get your feedback and tighten it up.
Council Member Jacobson.
I think your take, Jesse, is absolutely correct. And this is one of the third rails of Mercer Island politics. So there's no sense in our jumping on it. Just leave it and go.
Commissioner Westberg.
If you wanted to tighten it up, I would just delete the first sentence because the second sentence with Peter's change says it all. We're going to actively pursue options to permanently protect parks and open space areas. Do you need perpetuity in there as a, is that a?
This was a, and I don't have the previous pros plan. This was a version of a goal that was carried over previously. I guess I would look to the commission. How do you feel about that change?
So now let's see.
Both sentences say the same thing to me, but
I understand where Rory's coming from, and I do think that they both say the same thing. Vice Chair Struck.
Yeah, thank you. I think they're a slightly different, and I might be splitting hairs here, but I think, you know, you can own something in perpetuity, but the idea of permanently protecting them is really, to me, is a little bit separate. I mean, we have I assume most of our parks in perpetuity today, in some shape or form. But as far as kind of permanently protecting them, I think, again, the idea, and maybe this is where you know, different people can obviously have different views, but permanent protection is to kind of say, you know, we're going to keep our parks and open spaces, you know, or shield them, if that's the right term, from, you know, commercial development and things like that. So I do them slightly different.
Right, but do you think they both need to be there, or like we were saying, take out the first sentence?
Well, I think my point was that I think that the first sentence is slightly different than the second sentence. I guess you could do that, because really the action item is the pursuing options to protect the parks. So I'm okay with taking it.
Commissioner Cohen?
Don Cohen, I was going to say that I would leave it the way it is, even if there's some overlap. It's one of the core principles that people who are interested in parks and open spaces continue to assert. And if it's redundant, well, so be it. Perhaps it bears redundancy from time to time. I normally would be somebody who thought we should shorten it up, but I think offhand I would leave it in and not worry too much about the overlap. I'm thinking of the Venn diagram, you know, the overlap, but it's not confusingly overlapping.
Okay, Commissioner Markson?
Well, at risk of being redundant with Don, I agree. I was going to say what he said.
Perfect. All right, well, we'll leave it in and we'll go on to the next one then.
All right. Chair McCarthy, I wanted to ask, would it be okay if I took out the measure progress annually?
I think so. I feel like that seems like a really, I would say like to do it like longer than that. But yes, I think that measuring progress annually seems really, I don't know, that seems like a lot. I don't know.
And, you know, this is higher level feeding to the council to then set a future work plan.
Yeah. Sorry, Commissioner Westberg, did you have a comment or you just had your hand up?
I accidentally had my hand up, but I think that wording adds a degree of specificity to this that is not present in other objectives. It's more prescriptive as far as how it would be measured and how often I would take it out. Because we're not doing that with the other objectives.
Yeah. So we're yes to take it out is what you're saying. Vice Chair Stark?
Yes, since this was originally my thought, and I think, again, kind of when we changed definitions to Commissioner Westberg's point, it probably doesn't make quite as much sense. And I think the earlier comment by our city manager and council liaison about the work plan and so forth, I think there'll be plenty of opportunity to make sure that, you know, we evaluate progress, you know, however often.
Right. Okay, great.
All right. So this next one, and Commissioner Cohen, you are just on top of it. Thank you for the question about why this objective was written with the word approximately. It basically says the pros plan will be periodically updated, about every 6 years. And so the question was, don't we have to do it every 6 years? And the answer is yes, for grant reasons. However, there's a cost to doing these updates. And by the way, personally, the 6-year timeframe is just mind-boggling. Some of us have been advocating to get this planning RCO, the state agency, onto a 10-year cycle, which is what city comprehensive updates are on. I remain possibly a little glass half full that will get done at some point. So the reason I use the word approximately is just simply because the city hits a point where it doesn't make this sense to invest the time in the update because there are no grant applications in the queue. This plan is intended to be really a 10-year plan. It's only on a 6-year update because of RCO. So if you think though, future councils and boards really need to see it more prescriptive, I'm fine with that. We would still have the option to fund the update or delay it. But that's why the word approximately is in there.
Commissioner Cohen, are you?
I'm okay with it. I just remembered that it was a requirement of something, but I couldn't remember what. So, but the explanation, I understand the explanation.
All right, let's move on to the next one.
All right, this is Commissioner Struck. These are really great questions. Creating a timetable to establish or update master plans. Commissioner Struck, I have gone back and forth on this several times over the last couple of days. So if you want to share your vision, this is the goal related to adopting and updating master plans for park sites to guide significant park development.
Well, yeah, so once again, I was kind of using what I'll call the original definition, which has been changed on objectives. So I think this is, now would be considered perhaps a little bit more prescriptive. Although, so I'm happy, dropping it. Although I think as a good management practice, I think having, somebody having a timetable or understanding of kind of where everything should be makes a lot of sense, but it doesn't necessarily need to be in this document.
One thing I'll share, and the reason I'm on the fence about this one is, let's take Luther Burbank. That master plan was adopted, in 2006. And master plans usually have about a 20-year shelf life. So we're coming due, but I don't know that we would recommend an update. The park is largely built out. That's just an off the cuff comment. So, we could think about this a little bit. We could think about getting all the master plans onto a schedule and maybe looking out 10 or 20 years. Yeah, that's what I've got.
Commissioner Westberg, you have a comment?
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't send these in, but I had written a note along the lines of Peter's original comment that this goal I can, or this objective I could see reshaping to be a little more specific about what the intent is with regard to updating master plans. Just Jesse, based on your comment, the way I read this, it's wide open as far as whether we go back and redo ones that were done recently, or whether there are particular parks that we know we need to target. And some of those are mentioned in the capital improvement plan, but it just seemed kind of broad and amorphous to me as an objective, and it could be perhaps defined a little more clearly.
So would welcome any feedback to tighten this up. I think master plans, they're not always the most joyous experience. Let's face it, they're pretty tough. They're usually lots of opinions coming together to shape the vision for a park facility. We use the tool though when there's a significant park development that needs to be considered. And so I'll say this, and then maybe you can look at this and suggest any revisions. We do so because, one change in a park facility could impact the whole way it operates. For example, if you decided at Luther Burbank you wanted to take the playground out and drop in a spray park, well, somebody would argue that's a one-for-one change. Well, it's not. It has significant, operational changes, parking, everything. And so we wouldn't ever take something like that on unless we had looked at the master plan and either amended it or done an entirely new one. So this is in here to give us some safety nets to say, hey, community changes, go through this process.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, maybe you could do it identify needs for master plans that are either new plans or updates to guide all significant park development projects, blah, 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 blah. The language is there.
All right.
Then the objective is to make sure that you've got a master plan in place when you're confronted with one of these situations.
Commissioner Westberg, I was copying and pasting. Can you suggest your change again? I didn't capture it.
Well, it was something like exchange. It was something like, it depends on whether for this objective you want to, you're sort of stating it as a policy. We won't do these things without a master plan, reinforcing that idea. So the objective for the period of this pros plan could be that you identify and prioritize the needs for master plans to guide all significant park development projects, achieve cohesive design, et cetera, et cetera. So there's an action there. As these issues come up, you would identify the need for a plan that would reinforce the analysis that you need.
I like that. Unless anybody has any objections, I think we should go on to the next one.
Good. Nice job, team. This was a good question. Commissioner Struck about difference between, and by the way, I need to get a lot more consistent. The 20-year capital project list is also referred to as a capital facilities plan. I can tell you citywide, we haven't been doing a great job about maintaining these essentially long-term lists. It's all the projects, right? All the projects that are identified in master plans or management plans are land into this master list. We need that master list. It actually drives your impact fee calculation. So citywide, we're getting these lists updated. Transportation is working on their long-term list. We're working on the long-term parks list. So that's what it is. I do think, thanks to the comment, that we have to hold ourselves accountable. When we update the 6-year CIP, the long-term list, the 20-year list, whatever we're going to call it, also needs to be updated. So sorry, this one split across the page here. I proposed, based on Commissioner Struck's feedback, added the revisions and noted that it should be updated at least every 2 years.
I don't see any objections to that change.
Good.
Okay.
Yes. All right, Commissioner Struck, this one's going to be a little loftier discussion. You pointed out that we have a pretty solid walkability score according to the Trust for Public Land, and objective 2.7 talks about being able to walk within a 1/2 mile. What I noted is this piece, safe walking and biking routes to those locations. I think the challenge with this objective is what is meant by safe. Just by way of comparison, the city of Redmond is probably the industry leader in this work. They started working on this 15 or so years ago, identifying what it means to have a safe route. We're not there yet. So I didn't propose a revision, but I'm certainly open to that feedback.
Commissioner Westberg?
So just to clarify, Jesse, the issue here is safety. The concern is safe access, either by foot or by bike to your nearest park.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's certainly a different emphasis than the way it's written. About using the 1/2 mile metric.
So, and the 1/2 mile metric is a walkability standard, right? So we want to make sure standing in anyone's driveway on the island, they can potentially walk 1/2 mile. And then I think we start looking at this, others, safe walking and biking routes. And so how does an objective like this work? I guess what I would point out is in the TIP, the Transportation Improvement Plan, if there's a sidewalk project or a trail project or a bike lane project that would improve a safety route, we would do what we were talking about earlier. And we would say, this project supports objective 2.7 in the PROS plan, safe walking and biking routes to parks. Does it drive those projects forward? Maybe yes, maybe no.
Vice Chair Struck?
Yes, thank you, Peter Struck. As I read the staff response and the discussion here regarding kind of the safety aspect of it, quite frankly, that piece of it kind of, when I first read it and thought about it, I kind of only thought about the first half of the walkability issue, and that was kind of my comment. I'm wondering if there should be two goals or two objectives. One is kind of the walkability and one is safety. And as I think about it further, if we go to our project criteria, the highest weighted criteria is safety. So that's kind of rather than trying to squish it all into one.
Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah, I think let's split it into two then, and have another one in the twos.
I won't do the wordsmithing tonight, but if
I think that's totally fine.
Yeah, if you're in agreement, we can bring that back.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's go on to the next one.
All right, this Commissioner Struck was a little tricky because I think we've got some different themes going on here. So do you want to take this one?
Sure. So my thinking on this was, there's a lot of, evaluating opportunities to basically, like on sports fields, for example, we want to go to kind of the sports grass or the artificial turf type of approach as opposed to natural grass. And being a former member of BUG, I fully understand why and all that kind of good stuff. And, similarly things, but one of the things that as I was walking around the parks this summer, also I started kind of noticing areas, primarily sidewalk areas or where there's imperial surface saying, now, why is that there? And I think there's probably, I have no idea how many, because I didn't try to inventory it, but there's a number of areas where perhaps 30 or 40 years ago when these amenities or paths, blacktopped or cement paths were put in, they made sense, but maybe they don't make sense anymore. So to the extent that we could have as an objective to evaluate and say maybe there's opportunities to go back to a more natural surface. There's clearly a lot of environmental and sustainability benefits to that, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, that was my thought there.
So go ahead, Chair McCarthy, and then I'll share a couple thoughts.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to note that Commissioner Cohen had a thing, but if you want to respond to Commissioner Struck and then first.
Go ahead, Commissioner Cohen.
Don Cohen. Well, this raises directly the question that was in the staff report about how do you balance, or do you want to balance accessibility to people of all diverse, characteristics versus the, as a little impervious surface as possible. I don't know the answer to that, but that's a tough question. I thought it was an appropriate question to try to gauge in the second survey, and I put that in a different thing I think that I sent. But I don't know how you say this in a way that takes that issue into account also, or if you want to.
We've certainly heard at the city council level, the commission level, the staff level, from folks that would like to have some sort of a no net increase of impervious surface objective or goal. And I didn't write it because it creates an implementation problem for projects. Let me give you some really low-hanging fruit examples, but the spirit is there, right? The spirit, we're definitely hearing the spirit. So I've been trying to figure out how to capture it. If we go put a new park bench in somewhere and we seat it in a concrete pad, that's impervious surface. Our accessibility projects, of which we will be required as we do major upgrades at park facilities, you'll have to add in some new impervious surface. You could certainly, I think, Commissioner, start decommission other trails, right? And be real efficient with your green space. The real restrictive, though, no net increase of impervious surface makes me nervous. I will also share, people often, I think you all know this, but impervious surface includes gravel. So even if we put down a natural surface path, it still counts as impervious. However, you've heard from your community, keep Mercer Island Parks green is a high priority. So I am struggling. I think this probably needs to be its own objective. I just have been struggling to find the words for it. Maybe Commissioner Westberg has the magic solution.
I doubt I have a magic solution, but as far as this goal, I mean, bringing in the concept of what do we do about impervious surface, I agree with you. That's a separate, to me, that's a separate objective. And if we need an objective for that, fine, it should be, something along the lines of during, we're going to evaluate the need, perhaps evaluate the need for additional controls or oversight of the addition of impervious surfaces in parks. Because I'm with you, I don't think a strict, square foot per square foot sort of rule works from an operational standpoint. I think you have to have an overall goal that we're looking at not adding impervious surfaces to park, but be flexible enough to accommodate the small changes that may be necessary for ADA or whatever. And I agree with Peter that we should be looking for opportunities to decommission things that are not areas that are currently impervious and not being used. What I would do with this particular goal is I would just, I'd just simply use the first line as the objective. Pursue and implement strategies to maximize use of existing park and recreation assets, because that's what this is all about. It's let's be flexible about our existing assets and see if community demands have changed, then let's address those and see if there's ways without building new facilities, we can take advantage of what we have. And then if we want to address the question of impervious surface, that should come in a separate goal.
Commissioner Markson?
Well, Commissioner Westberg, definitely, I totally agree with what he was saying. And I was going to suggest the same change to just remove the second half, but partly for a different reason. And and I don't know if maybe there's some background I'm missing, but for some reason, those last two parts seemed way more specific than other objectives below other goal areas. So I wasn't, I mean, that was one reason I initially was going to suggest, or just wanted to understand how they ended up
Mhm.
in the way that they are. But I like the idea, unless they're there for a specific reason that I don't know of, that we just put the first sentence in.
I'll just, if I can
go ahead.
respond real quick.
Yeah.
Some of these are remnants that were floating around, and they got thematically mushed together. That's my professional term. I think it reads just fine, and it provides a nice overarching strategy to take out the detail, because you can still use that objective to inform
Right.
recommendations and city council decisions.
Seems like that would be like a recommendation for this objective, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. The other thing I guess I was going to suggest for the impervious surface, which I agree with, like the sentiment of, but understand the complexity of saying you're going to do no net increase in impervious surface, but it does seem like it would belong under a different goal anyway, I think.
It probably squares up with the sustainability and environment goal.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
Well, I'm hearing that, well, I'm sorry, Vice Chair Struck.
Well, so I'm a little confused now. So right now for goal 2.8, the suggestion is to just have the first sentence there, pursue and implement strategies to maximize use of existing park and recreation assets.
Mhm.
That was the suggestion.
Oh, yeah, okay. But and then is the second part then kind of this idea of the balance of, call it no net increase, or, I understand that can be considered to be a little bit too inflexible, but that kind of that balancing idea, you're thinking to put that in a separate objective, is that it?
I think what I'm hearing, and I'm agreeing for what it's worth, that this impervious surface objective probably should be a standalone item, possibly in the sustainability and environment section. And
Okay.
I have not been able to.
I'm fine with that, because I think that just looking at the 2.8 and just having that first sentence and then saying, well, that we really mean kind of this balance between natural and impervious, and that whole thing, you would never, a community member reading that, they would never in a million years come to that conclusion. So I think having a separate piece is fine.
Everyone has a homework assignment. Draft that objective. I've been struggling with it for 2 days. So, okay, it seems like, so we're okay with this change on 2.8, and we've got to draft another objective on impervious surfaces.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry, Jesse, to interrupt, but it's 7:09, so we've been at this for over an hour and 40 minutes. I'm wondering if we should have a 10-minute break at some point here before we continue on with the rest of these. I know we're not even close to anything, but I also want to be mindful of people's attention spans. Could we do that? Sorry. Jesse?
I agree. You have the power to do that as chair.
Okay, well, then I'm saying, let us take a 10-minute break. We're at 7:10 right now, so we will reconvene at 7:20. Thank you. All right, and it is 7:20 and we are back. And I appreciated that break, so thank you.
All right, we are off again, and I should have probably grabbed this one before we took a break. Commissioner Cohen had suggested a change to objective 2.8, and we just eliminated this whole second half. So I think everyone's in agreement. We're probably good to take that out. Yep.
Correct.
All right, the next item is a bigger policy discussion. Thank you, Commissioner Struck, for raising it. Objective 2.9 speaks to the development of a land acquisition strategy. Just for context, what that is it's usually done in closed session and confidentially, where the city identifies potential properties or easements that may be of interest in the future. It's a good tool to have. We don't have one of those tools yet. And then the second part of this objective speaks to the X number of acres per 1,000 residents standard that is used nationally. We hadn't got yet to the place of, and again, thank you, Commissioner Struck, for raising it. We hadn't done the analysis yet. I think there are some outstanding questions. Are we maintaining, our acreage per 1,000? Are we trying to grow it? Something in the middle? What are we, acres per 1,000 can be for developed parkland. It can be for developed parkland and open space. There's other types of units. So this one needs to come back to you on November 4th. I thought for tonight, we should just have a general discussion, and I can take some notes and try to get a sense of where the consensus is at. By the way, I do think the city council is looking for this section of our pros plan to be tightened up. They like this metric generally.
I think we would all love to grow the parkland, but is that a realistic goal is the question.
And are you saying that because most people say this because it's expensive?
Yeah. Well, and I just feel like, excuse me, how much is there left to buy? Or I guess there's properties with houses that could always be taken down, but.
One of the things we have not pursued is property donations or discounted sales or things like that. And I personally think it's time, but I will look to you all for feedback on that.
Commissioner Westberg, you have your hand up. Is that an old hand or a new hand?
That's an old hand, sorry.
Vice Chair Struck?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think, Jesse, you raised a number of great questions. I think that, you're right. You could spend hours on this one, but I think having a kind of going back to the way the goal objective is currently written, having a land acquisition strategy, I think makes sense. Obviously the devil's going to be in the detail. I think to the chair's comment about, where's the land? I think that, the possibility of having another Luther Burbank or Lid type of size of property is probably very unlikely. I think what you're going to be more looking at is, very small community or neighborhood type park developments and so forth. But I think your last comment about, it'll be interesting to see the results of the survey because we do ask questions there and just get a sense, from that, as a maybe as one barometer of what the community thinks about it. Thank you.
This could easily take an hour or more. What I might suggest, given the hour we are at tonight, is we get the survey results and we know we have to come back to this one on November 4th. And in the meantime, Steve and I will do some work around some potential objectives, the X acres per 1,000 type of analysis. Is that?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And definitely, I think it's a good thing to have it in there and have it known in the community. So if people are looking, organizing their estate and things like that. And that, you know, could be a great legacy for them potentially, if they have some land to contribute. All right, so let's go on to the next one.
Commissioner Struck asked about objective 2.10, which broadly talks about national, regional, state, other organizations regarding, you know, donations or to partner in acquisition of land. And then I want to get number 2 up here too, which I think was, yeah, Commissioner Cohen asked about the definition of benevolent, which could actually be taken out after I looked at it a second time. Typically something like this is in here just as a broad objective. I'm totally open to your thoughts. We always reference it when we apply for grants and things.
I feel like it doesn't hurt to have it in there. I do also agree that benevolent entities doesn't need to be in there. Commissioner Westberg?
I think in answer to Peter's question, I think it could be measured simply by looking at the amount of resources, either monetary or in kind, that are brought in on an annual basis through these types of partnerships. So that would be one indicator that we're actually working on and achieving this objective.
So keep it, take out benevolent entities.
Mhm.
Any,
Do you want to add a measurability component to it? Sorry, Commissioner Cohen has a comment.
Oh, yeah, before you take out benevolent entities, I just didn't know what that meant. Is foundations, is that encompassed in nonprofit organizations, city manager, in your mind? If it isn't, that's what I thought you were talking about.
yeah, I was thinking of the like Friends of the Songbirds that wants to help us buy land. And I thought, well, they would be covered under nonprofit. Foundations, I don't know, what do you all think? It could be a nonprofit entity or not. Not all foundations are.
Yeah, you got the Schultz Family Foundation or something like that. I don't know. It's not a big deal, but I was trying to figure it out.
Mhm.
I think the intent is clear with those changes. You know, if we use a phrase that, I don't know, I think we took benevolent from a sample text somewhere, so I can live without it. Foundations is.
Do we want to add a measurability to this? Oh, sorry, I didn't see. Sorry, City Council Member Jacobson.
Would it be simpler to say in 2.10 that utilize resources of public and private potential donors? And that gives it broad, and you'd have fewer words and it's clearer intent. Pardon my wordsmithing, but I couldn't resist.
We throw in nonprofit, public, private, and nonprofit.
Mhm. I think that sounds fine.
Yes.
All right, and then do we want to add some sort of measurability to this, or are we okay with it? Or you just were curious, Peter?
Well, I think that since we've changed the definition of objective and dropped the term measurable, you could say that my point is somewhat moot, but I think the term utilize, I don't know, this is one of those, it's like consider, right? I mean, it's, and I can't, I can't come up with a better verb at this point, but you know, I think there's probably one out there if I thought about it long enough, but as far as kind of the, you know, leave it as it is for now.
Okay. All right, then let's go on to the next one. Oh, sorry, Commissioner Markson.
I'm sorry. I'm just curious, is this something that we, the city, can control, or is it just like we would go illicit, or is it something we, if someone comes to us, we work with them?
Both. So-
Okay. So the city can control it in some way by
Yeah.
looking for.
I think if we adopt a land acquisition strategy, the public facing side of that plan would put together some pretty specific property acquisition goals and strategies without naming specific properties, which would then drive city action, if that makes sense.
Right. But I mean, in terms of utilizing the resources of public, private, well, public, yes, but private and nonprofit donors, that we can, the city can control that.
Well, we would seek those opportunities. Maybe that's where we need to change that word utilize to something else.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I was just trying to decide if you put something measurable, can you actually control it? That, I guess, is basically what I was getting at.
Commissioner Westberg.
Well, I guess in the interest of wordsmithing, I would just propose, since Peter has a problem with utilize too, and I do too, it's not quite right in this context. I would just say the goal should be that we partner with public, private, and nonprofit donors in acquiring land for park and recreation needs. Because the emphasis here, well, maybe the intended emphasis was how much can we get? How much money can we get? But the idea is to use the resources of these other organizations to help us acquire park property.
Yeah, so then down at the bottom, take out to partner in acquiring and just have partner with the donors in acquiring land or to acquire land.
It will make that read better, but yeah. Okay. Commissioner Stark asked, well, and I guess, so part one is, do you want to keep objective 2.12 in? It's a little more specific. It describes a playground plan being developed. I could argue based on the preference of the commission tonight that we should take it out and it should show up in the CIP if you so desire, or we can leave it in. There are some specific items that we dropped in the objectives. This will show this, if this is to go forward, it will show up in your CIP. It's a planning project. I think maybe, sorry, I'm gonna keep going here. The issue that Jason Kittner was raising, this was one of his suggestions, is look, we have all these playgrounds that were installed around the same time and they look a lot alike. If we're really gonna do it right, you've got all these playgrounds in the queue, you know, you've got to do a comprehensive plan or we're gonna end up with replicas again.
I don't know. I could take it or leave it. If it's going to come up somewhere else, then why are we putting it here? Is my logic. But it does sound like it is a thing that needs to be done. What do you think, Vice Chair Stark?
Yeah, I'm fine with if it's going to go in the CIP as the city manager mentioned, that's fine.
Part I just highlighted is maybe more important to the objective, which is to plan for a range of play types, universal access, a phasing plan.
Yeah, so take out the first part.
Yeah, do you want to keep this in its entirety? Take it out?
Well, take out the first part, the playground plan guide, and then, but do include the goal of having a range of play types. I feel like this would be a good opportunity to use the word inclusive in that list of things somewhere, but.
We've got universal access in here.
So, so then the objective becomes to ensure that playgrounds on Mercer Island have all those attributes.
Or that we have playgrounds that have a range of those things at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then developing the plan is an action step to get to that objective.
Yeah. Well, should we leave it? You will have time to come back to it. As I've remodeled it here, I can fuss a little bit more with the wording.
Don, did you have some comments? Because you also wanted to discuss the equitable distribution of on that one as well.
Yeah.
My equitable distribution thing was, at least in my mind, wasn't focused just on playgrounds. But
Yeah.
I don't have a strong feeling on the wording or the components of this part of 212.
Mhm.
All right, well, should we call this one okay? And you'll have another pass at it with the revision.
Yeah, let's keep going.
All right, then this one, which is Commissioner Cohen, I think. This all comes out because of the edit we just made.
Mhm.
So. Oops. Okay to move on then?
Mhm.
Oh, and then the question about equitable geographic distribution, we applied it in the playground context. Again, it's because we're actually looking at the playground as a system-wide amenity and making sure that we have different facilities balanced. I can go back and revisit if equitable distribution is not the right term. We're trying to mix up the play types around the island.
Mhm.
Right?
Jody?
Yeah, I think leave it in there for now. I understand what you're talking about. I don't know a better way to say equitable geographic. What do you think, Don?
Don Cohen. Well, my recollection was when we talked about that, we didn't spend a lot of time talking about it. There wasn't any consensus about whether, at least among the commissioners who discussed, there wasn't a consensus about the importance of having, equal number, equal type of different facilities at the north and south end or the middle. That's what I just didn't remember, any resolution of that fundamental policy.
Right.
You are correct. You did not include it as a criteria for the ranking of your project list. The only reason we put it back in here is because we want to make sure we end up with a balanced playground plan. So I think the example I put in here, Dawn, was we don't end up with all the natural playgrounds in the south end of the island.
Mhm.
But if you want to take that out as in the statement, I can take it out, or you can think about it.
Well, I guess the equity part of it is it distracts me. I don't know if what you said, I think is sort of like with a varied geographic distribution or something.
Mhm.
I don't know. It's just sort of like,
Mhm.
there's a lot of equity stuff and I'm not sure where the specific trail is located is the highest priority on a lot of people's minds.
Yeah.
What if can we just take out the word equitable?
Yeah, we could. Commissioner Burstein, do you have
That's exactly what I was going to say. If you just remove the word equitable and maintain geographic distribution, it allows flexibility to put playgrounds where it makes sense
Mhm.
without forcing an action of, well, there's one natural area here, we must have another one there.
That would work for me.
I agree.
All right. See above. Okay. All right. All right, this commissioner struck. So objective 2.14 is relating to special use facilities. This is things that, you know, athletic fields, spray parks, bike skills areas. And this was added in because we want to have an overarching objective. This might be redundant actually with the other master plan goal, but you know, if you want to put something new in that's significant, it's got to go through the master planning process.
Commissioner,
Go ahead.
sorry, Commissioner Struck, you've got your
Yeah.
hand.
Thank you. Just to kind of give the kind of my thought on my comment. When I read the chapter text, it was kind of, well, okay, we're going to develop, expand, and so forth. And you kind of say, okay, well, in order to well, let's use the term expand, you know, then you've got to find a site for that. And I guess my observation is over the last several years that I've been kind of actively either involved or aware of these issues, is that there's very little discussion about, well, if you know, we're taking some piece of a parcel of property and changing its use, and it's just like, okay, well, it's free, we'll just do it, and there's never any discussion about, well, what is the quote unquote costs of doing that. And I just think that there should be a more balanced approach where we understand that, because if you take it to the logical conclusion or illogical conclusion, I mean, you could say, well, you know, everything could be developed and so forth. It kind of gets back to that earlier discussion a few pages ago about the idea of the impervious surface issue. And, you know, and looking at the staff response, again, using the master plan process, as I said, my experience is I'm not sure that my concerns are addressed in that process. So I would kind of default to that. Alternatively, the objective could be expanded to require development of a more formal policy or process. I guess I would land there.
Commissioner Westberg?
Unless there's a reason, excuse me, unless there's a reason to single out these special use facilities, it seems to me that we have the concept for this objective covered under 2.4.
Yeah. I think given the preceding question or discussion, gosh, I'm getting rummy. You could probably take this out. It was dropped in because we're getting a lot of requests for special use facilities. And Commissioner Struck, your point is well taken and the staff agree. You can't just drop in a new facility to a park, but I think we may have covered it in 2.4. So we take this one out and assume it's covered.
Okay.
Okay.
I agree with taking it out.
Everyone's, and let's, you know, again, you're going to have 2 months to sleep on this. So if we come back and we don't have the language tight enough, then we'll make a change. We have time. All right, not to torture you. The next one, oh, I had the numbering all mixed up. I'll fix that, Commissioner Struck. So let's go on. I want you guys to know, I looked at that numbering like 6 times, so I can't believe I still didn't get it right. All right. Oh gosh, I don't know what to do with 3.1. So we're on to maintenance and operations. This is a broad aspirational statement about maintaining all parks and facilities safe, attractive condition. This has had like 16 versions. The staff don't love super prescriptive language. Originally, it said something like develop maintenance management plans for all the parks. That would be a huge undertaking. So we We left in maintenance standards, routine preventative maintenance programs. We do this. We have general level of service standards. We probably need to formalize them. What do you guys think?
Vice Chair Struck.
Yeah, so again, my comment is, I guess, maybe just kind of good management practice. If you're gonna put in an objective that you want to establish standards and so forth, it's just, well, you know, kind of where's kind of that next step, and maybe it is a little bit too detailed at this point, but that was kind of my thought of saying, you know, kind of where does the rubber meet the road?
So I will tell you this, the staff do not love this goal. They're a little worried that it's either too prescriptive or they're not sure what it means. I think you could take out that whole item I highlighted, and then we would work on some, you know, very specific action items to help support a broader objective, but I'm open to your feedback.
Commissioner Westberg.
That would be my recommendation, Jesse, is because my question on this when I read it was, well, don't we currently have standards and a professional maintenance program or a preventative maintenance program, at least at some level? So is the objective to tighten that up, or is it the broader aspirational one that you said, which is that we maintain all parks and facilities in a manner that keeps them safe and attractive?
Oops.
If we need to develop the standards and a preventative maintenance program, that could be an action item further down.
Yeah, after thinking about your comments and the staff, I think we take out that second sentence, and then we make it a work item to update the level of service standards and the maintenance management plans and resource the work. That was what the staff were most concerned about.
Great. Commissioner Struck, did you have another comment or you just forgot your hand?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Commissioner Cohen.
Don Cohen, if we're done with this one pretty soon, when we go on to the next one, Jesse, my 3.5 comment, which
Yeah, got it.
it's in the wrong place. I see, and it's not numbered. That's the problem. Okay,
Yeah.
I see. Okay, go ahead then. Sorry.
I think I got a numbering error there. Thank you. Okay, so I think I'm hearing we're okay with this one.
Yep.
Good. Okay. This was a good question. And so Commissioner Struck was asking, well, let me back up. We dropped in some specific facility objectives here. They can come out. We put the facilities one in specifically because they're big and facilities keep getting kicked down the road. If you decide to take 3.6 out and there's later references to the community center annex and the Luther boiler building, I guarantee you they will show up in your 6-year CIP because they're pretty high priority. So this could come out. It might be too specific. Commissioner Struck asked about, should we be outsourcing be considered a means to reduce the footprint? I'm not real keen on adding that here. Your maintenance staff are in represented union positions, and it's complicated to talk about outsourcing. We already do some outsourcing. So I can think about language that doesn't get us, all riled up with the union. We have a great relationship with them. Or Commissioner Struck, did you have any suggestions? Should we keep this?
Yeah, thank you, Jesse. Peter Struck speaking. My comment was really, I guess it was really more of a comment, just saying, I kind of thought, hey, what about outsourcing and so forth. So I think that's probably, a little bit too far in the weeds for this objective. And so I'm happy to kind of just throw it out there. And I understand the sensitivity issue as well.
Do you want to include the facilities objectives that are specific, or you want to take them out? There's one here, and in maintenance, and then there's a couple more later on.
What do we think? Sorry, the numbering has got me all mixed up.
I know.
So are we on 3.3 right now?
No, we're on 3.6, and this objective is specifically related to the maintenance.
That's to the city, yeah, behind City Hall. Okay.
So to do what this says, assess the feasibility of replacing the building,
Mhm.
some money into the park CIP to contribute. We're one of the maintenance teams working out of that building.
Mhm.
I'm after working with all of you tonight, I'm leaning towards taking them all out. If you-
Mhm.
My recommendation.
So I think that, yeah, I think they should be zoomed out more. Yeah. So take it out and put it into the CIP.
All right, this is probably a remnant of our document error we had earlier today. This is actually from the trails section, I believe. I can come back to it, or we can tackle it now. I don't even know what number it is.
What number it would be in the trails. Sorry, Commissioner Struck, did you have a comment?
5.7, I think, Jesse.
I think this is Don's.
Yeah, but you have your hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. So that one just can come right out then? That's 3.5?
No,
Because it's already in.
no, I have somehow I have the comment in the wrong order here. So
Got it, okay.
Cohen is suggesting we add the words, this is related to adding amenities that, oh, maybe it isn't.
Yeah.
Anyway,
This was in response to what was numbered as 3.5,
okay.
but I accidentally in my email called it 3.10.
Oh, I
first,
see,
and
I
I
see.
followed up, but this is a 3.5 comment.
Mhm.
All right.
I like putting where appropriate on there because not every single trailhead is going to have room / need to have all of those amenities added.
And Jesse, if in the third column, if you put 3.5 there at the beginning of it, then before some parks, that there should be a 3.5 there. Well,
Oh.
yeah, that may be why it got screwed up. I sent you an email with 3 of those that didn't make the specific numbering.
Mhm.
Well, we make a great team, Commissioner Cohen. I got a bunch of stuff mixed up today.
Yeah, like the next one, same thing when we get to the next one.
Commissioner Westberg?
I just have a question on 3.5 with regard to what is the intent behind this goal? Aren't we doing this now? By and large, is the purpose of the goal to ensure that we address deficiencies where we don't have these amenities in place? I didn't quite understand what it was trying to accomplish.
Keep doing what we're doing, enhance amenities where we don't have them, with the change where appropriate when feasible.
Okay.
You do have some facilities, some of your street ends don't even have benches.
Right. Okay. So it's, where appropriate and feasible to improve these type of amenities in all parks. Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking of street end parks. Some people might feel about Island Park the same way and stuff. So yeah, I agree. I agreed with the language, and the language that was inserted was fine with me.
Commissioner Burstein?
This is Paulrnstein. Do we need to have the specific amenities listed here? Can we remove those and just say open space areas and facilities where appropriate and when feasible to improve the user experience and access? My concern with having that in there is it may lend somebody to say, well, I've got a trailhead, where's my lighting?
Yeah.
Mhm.
This funny conversation with the capital project list where the word amenities was used, and I made the staff go and specify on each one what the amenity was, because I thought this was, but I think here making it a little more general would be totally appropriate.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. We are moving on to 4 now.
Mhm.
All right. So this objective, this is Commissioner Cohen. It's related to sustainable practices in construction and maintenance. And we specifically dropped in water and energy use conservation. So the suggestion was to take out the word request and require. And I just put in where appropriate, because I can imagine there are some scenarios where, let me just say, bidding is complicated. And right now we do not have an overarching sustainability plan. We're working on that, a climate action plan, but I think we'll provide policy guidance for this very thing. So I was worried about, you know, we're saying require, but I don't have any policy guidance to back it up. What do you think? Too loose?
Commissioner Cohen?
Well, I'd be interested in Jake's thoughts on this because he works in this field in his real life. But it seems to me that there's nothing wrong or slippery slopish in just in your bid document, your bid request document saying, please address sustainability efforts that you believe would be appropriate and what the cost of having those implemented, what percentage of your cost is attributable to those. So, I don't know, something, because I mean, the city has gone a long way on sustainability.
Councilmember Jacobson?
One of the things that let me back up. There are a lot of public bidding requirements that with which the city has to comply. And one of the risks in conducting public bidding is that you haven't followed something and you open the door to a bid protest. I could see a situation where you might want to have alternates in your bid that you weren't bound and determined to accept and have them separately priced, because a number of these kinds of things, depending on what beauty is in the eye of the beholder, can be very expensive and may preclude being able to build a facility or to repair a facility that badly needs it. What comes to my mind is our city maintenance facility, which is, you know, on a wing and a prayer, as I understand it. So I think general language would be to solicit sustainable best practices in procurement of construction projects for the city. And that way, when we do have a climate action plan, we can say, you know, are you going to use solar panels for lighting, or what are you going to do? But it would give us the flexibility that I don't think this language has. And at some point, we may have to decide, do we want it for another $200,000? Do we want to have solar lighting, or do we want to have a facility without it? And one of the concerns that I have is that we are a city with limited facilities. And while many of these things are financed by grants or outside money, some of it has to come out of our general fund or out of our capital improvement or street or sewer or one of our various funds. So it's not as if we have infinite resources, and to commit ourselves to requiring that, I think, puts us in a difficult position.
Hey, Jake, you said something that I think got to where I was going, but I lost it. Include sustainable best practices in the procurement of.
Well, I think I would solicit, I'd use the word solicit sustainable best practices in the procurement of construction major maintenance activities, period.
Yeah, this one, you know, Commissioner Cohen, I was just thinking about what you said, and unless the way construction bidding works in the public sector, which Jake was alluding to, it's kind of ridiculous. Unless it's scoped, we can't, like, we basically put it in the scope of work, it gets bid, and we take the lowest responsible bidder. So I think trying to get to something that says that we incorporate it, you know, into the scope of work. And I can monkey with this language a little bit more. That, you know, that basically says we're appropriate, we're scoping it in the project. Does that make sense? I don't want to torture you with bidding laws.
This is Don Cohen. I'm okay with giving up my idea of having it required. I don't know. I don't care about the specific language. The language that you have in there now doesn't even include, though, Jesse, your suggestion of where appropriate or something like that. It just says you have to solicit that. And I don't know whether you want that or Jake thinks that's appropriate or not. So, but I'm okay with not having it required, period.
That's a good suggestion.
Great. All right, let's move on to the next one.
Okay, this was 4.5, Commissioner Struck. This is related to supporting the Open Space Conservancy Trust and the management of Pioneer Park and Engstrom Open Space. For those of you that are new to the commission, the trust is like a separate entity. So Commissioner Struck suggested adding pursue whether open spaces can be transferred to the Open Space Conservancy Trust. And I thought that might be covered under 2.1, which we beat to death earlier in the meeting, which was the perpetuity. But if it's something unique and different and you'd like to add it.
Yeah, this is Peter Struck. The suggestion about putting it in 2.1 is fine. I think I would just, by putting it in 2.1, I would actually list it out. I wouldn't put, because I just reread 2.1 and right now it would just fall under other strategies. And so it really wouldn't be called out. So I would just put it there, but specifically mention it.
So add 4.5 into 2.1 as an additional sentence and take it out of environment and sustainability. Is that what you think?
I think we would keep this part of 4.5 here, and then
Right.
I'm gonna take Commissioner Struck's suggestion there and add it to 2.1.
Very good. Commissioner Westberg?
Well, I would just point out that increasing and I'm used to be on the Open Space Conservancy Trust and am supportive of the idea that they have more of a role in all open space. But doing that in and of itself doesn't guarantee protection in perpetuity. It's simply a procedural oversight change. It brings a new set of eyes onto open space issues that are outside of Pioneer Park.
Good point. This might be one where I attempt a revision and we look at it again in November. We take some time to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
All right. So 4.10.
Let's see. We're here. So the question was, what are King County current use taxation programs? And I put a link in the document. There's 4 programs. This is a new objective. It's another way to conserve property. It's a little outside of the scope of the parks plan. But I think the intent is a good one, that we should promote these programs. If you don't think it belongs here, I can certainly kind of put it on the list to forward to the council when they do their comprehensive plan update as, kind of a broader citywide look. These are essentially, opportunities for property owners to voluntarily preserve their properties under these 4 different programs.
Commissioner Westberg?
I'm okay with this one. I had a suggestion for 4.6 that I just wanted to get a placeholder in on, so we can go back to that when we're done with this.
All right. Are we okay with this one? Keep it for now?
Yeah, I'm okay. This is Don Cohen. I just didn't know what it was. Thank you.
Yep. All right. 4.6, let's.
Yeah, so this is Commissioner Westberg. Going back to our previous discussion about impervious surfaces, I thought we could add wording in this goal, because this is actively work to improve the condition of city-owned parks, trails, and open space areas through a variety of means. And after other habitat areas, insert the wording and limiting the addition of impervious surfaces.
All right, so. And right here, limiting the addition
of impervious surfaces in parks. If we need to say in parks. We don't probably.
No. We okay? Yep. No.
Does anybody have any comments? All right, let's move on.
Mr. Burstein, this was quite a meeting to join for your first one. Sorry. Okay.
Trial by fire.
Commissioner Struck, goal 4.10 is a conservation goal around reducing water use. And there's 2 comments here. The question was, is there a percentage goal that we have? I had not researched that. I can certainly do so. And I need to talk to our sustainability analyst. And then I think this was Commissioner Cohen, yes, said he wanted to talk about browning out. So browning out is basically when we stop irrigating essentially non-athletic field grass over the summer to save money. We currently have it called out specifically in the Aubrey Davis Park Master Plan, and it is a practice we're using around the city. So I have brown out in this objective. You could shorten this if
Commissioner Cohen, what is your thoughts on this? What were you wanting to have more information on about this?
I just didn't remember there having been a decision by anybody that said, okay, we are going to, that was just what Jesse said, that we're going to let non-athletic field grass brown out during the summer. I remember the discussion about that in connection with Aubrey Davis. I don't remember it as a general policy, but I'm not saying I wouldn't support it, but I just didn't remember that having been policy decided.
In some cases, the brownout just happened because it was a really hot summer and we didn't have, but people, we didn't have irrigation there anyway. Would you like to specify a percentage reduction in water usage? I can try to get my arms around that by the November meeting. Do you want to keep this or shorten it up?
Commissioner Struck?
Yeah, I mean, I just, again, it's one of those things, I think that this objective kind of begs for some type of measurement, whether it's here or it's in the recommendation or action item, that's fine. I mean, clearly this objective as it's currently worded is fine, so.
Mhm.
Okay, no
I'll leave it-
revision.
Defer to you.
Commissioner Westberg?
And in response to Jesse's question about shortening it up, I would recommend shortening it up. Keep it broad as, yeah, right there. And then the specific actions we're going to take, as well as potentially the metrics we're going to try to achieve, could be addressed in action plans.
Mhm.
Okay.
Great.
Tree City USA is a designation the city has. We've added it in as a specific objective. It's important to us, which is why it's called out. I thought Commissioner Struck's suggestions were good and
Mhm.
proposed revision.
Mhm. I agree. Commissioner Struck?
Yeah, that's fine. Ooh, take my hand down.
Yeah, Commissioner Struck, this was I think going back to that measurable comment, the objective around volunteer programs. By the way, the volunteer objectives were all over the place, so we attempted to combine them here. Wanted a statement that volunteers are important. We okay with this? We like a revision?
Yeah, I'm okay with it. Fine.
Rory, I saw you sit forward.
This is just a comment, and maybe throw it out for other commissioners, but under this particular category, there's no sort of overarching statement about a city objective related to climate change or leadership in climate change. And I just wondered whether for this plan, there should be something there to that effect. I don't have language yet, but I could noodle on it. I throw that out as a question for the other commissioner.
Mhm. Yeah, you're right. We probably should have some sort of language on that, especially given the summer that we've had this year.
Well, is this covered elsewhere in any city pronouncements or documents or anything like that? Jesse?
Yeah, the climate action plan will be underway here shortly, probably adopted in 2022. So I imagine there will be some overlap, but your parks, we're starting to look at, well, we've been doing this for a while, looking at different tree species and things that are more resilient. I think we could add something here. I'd be happy to take a stab at a draft objective for the next review.
Okay, that'd be great.
All right. And were we okay with this volunteer objective?
I'm okay with it.
All right, so I have a suggestion to maybe speed up this trails section. Commissioner Struck, thank you for pointing out, and I think Commissioner Cohen did too. There's some competing objectives, again, that happened from a whole bunch of editing. I think I need to take a stab at going back and cleaning up goal 5. So rather than try to do it tonight, I think we should bring it back to save time. Does everyone support?
I support that. Thumbs up, thumbs down.
Can you just tell me, for my thinking purposes, what trail system hierarchy was intended to mean, just so I can be thinking about that?
Yes, think big trails feed little trails, or parent trails feed child. So you've got like a highway, bikes, peds, some cities, horses, and then you've got spur trails, I can, Paul West is here listening, probably thinking I'm not doing the conversation justice, so I can tighten that up.
Well, the term just didn't mean anything to me, and I spent a lot of time arguing about precisely those kinds of things. So I didn't know what it was, whether it was hierarchy of importance, hierarchy and maintenance efforts, hierarchy and this and that. That's all. I just didn't know what it meant. So
Well, let's get that better explained then.
so other than that, you can hold the trail stuff and put it together in a different way if you want.
Yep, that needs to be fixed up. Okay, that one will also be taken care of. Let Commissioner Struck, are you okay if I take 5.2 and 5.3 as well and work on it with the other comments?
Oh, yeah, definitely, definitely.
Okay. Okay. So this is 5.7. This one is a little bit different. Provide trailhead accommodations where feasible. You could almost take 5.7 out unless you felt strongly that it needed to be included here, because we have that other amenities objective that we just.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Westberg. I thought it was covered under 3.5, so.
Yeah, I'd be okay with deleting this.
See, Steve, we are finding some things to take out.
I like it.
Today, Steve told me today we had too many. Okay, I need to fix also this one. So let's just put all these in that bucket. And this one too, next time. That. All right, goal 6, recreation. Mr. Struck, I think we might be saying the same thing here. You had mentioned this is relating to the recreation reset strategy that you just put hundreds of hours into. And we put a provision here to update it every 6 years. I think you were asking, like, there has to be a report out. So what I was trying to avoid is the assumption that the reset strategy is going to be redone like frequently, but we agree on some sort of a report out. And I don't know if that's too specific to include here, but that's certainly what the staff are assuming will happen. What do you all think?
Mr. Struck?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so when I read this initially, I mean, you know, it again, you know, 6 years is a long time, but I fully understand kind of the concept. So, but I think there should be something in there that would tell the reader that, you know, we're gonna, you know, kind of put this document away for 6 years and kind of never look at it or kind of check in on it and see does it make sense or not. And I'm sure you're not doing that, but I'm just thinking that that's kind of what the reader would be left with. So if there's something we could, you know, add about, like you say, annual operations update or something like that could be added. I think that's fine.
All right, we're all tired, so I will work on a revision because I understand what you're saying. You want the plan to be worked and used and not shelved, and we totally agree. All right, I'm gonna roll. Okay, 6.2. Commissioner Struck, you wrote a lot of words here.
Let's see here. Enhance the.
While you're reading it, Peter,
Yeah, please.
Counselor Jacobson has his hand up.
I just put it down since Jesse took the, you know, responsibility for, you know, taking a look at the prior item. There was no sense I can communicate with her directly.
Okay, Commissioner Westberg.
I just thought that there was 2 different ideas here that didn't necessarily seem to go together. So like the overall objective statement, enhance the diversity of recreation programs offered, focusing on programs that are in high demand or serve a wide range of users. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But then we go into water, specifically water-oriented and outdoor programs, which I think is kind of an implementation thing. So I would take the reference to those specific programs out unless there is, in staff discussions, there was a consensus about really wanting to focus on those programs over the next 6 to 10 years and increasing in response to the community surveys and other information, increasing water-based program, in which case it probably merits its own objective.
I would say we should keep it in. There's a lot of public feedback driving towards us growing your water-oriented programs. I guess I didn't catch that I dropped in the word outdoor. I was really trying to add the water-oriented piece. It probably should be its own objective, but I would actually put it in given the strong feedback we've been getting in that regard. So that would be its new objective.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
I probably will take out outdoor, it's implied.
Commissioner Struck?
Yes, thank you. So, yeah, you're right, it's getting late here. So, my comment was one of just saying that, I was just kind of trying to emphasize that, there's we have scarce resources and, a lot of different demands on those resources, and we just need to have, what do I call it, a multidimensional and scope, process to really go through and understand, where do we get kind of the biggest bang for the buck. And again, that doesn't necessarily mean specifically numbers or whatever, or uniqueness or whatever, but I think we just, we just need to have that and not just say, well, presume that what we want, because I think Jesse, what you're saying, well, we've had a lot of comment about, water-oriented activities. But, I'm not aware of that, but, you could convince me clearly. But I just think that, there has to be a process to kind of allocate those resources.
When I read your comment, Commissioner or Vice Chair Stark, I heard it as, I don't want you just going back to winging it, right? We just did a whole reset strategy. You need to follow it. And then the staff were also saying, hey, we got to have some creative license here. That's part of recreation. You got to try things out, but we are using the rec reset strategy. So, the other thing I will highlight here is we have a survey question related to this water-oriented piece. So if we get different information, we'll just take that one out. But is this revision helpful to you, Vice Chair Struck?
Yes. Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Commissioner Cohen?
Don Cohen. Jesse, if the new objective stays in, could you take a look at the wording and maybe just end it after the word programs? Even though I'm a great proponent of fishing, but it doesn't make sense. Expand service offerings for water-oriented programs to include boating. We have boating, right?
Yeah.
We have fishing, we have stuff like that. So.
Mm-hmm. Commissioner Burstein?
This is Paul Burstein. I just question if that's an objective or an implementation in terms of the water-oriented programs.
So I would argue that the implementation would be the type of programs we're going to pursue. But we can also just, hold this one and review the survey results. The questions in there.
Yeah, and then I think from the results of the survey, we should anticipate having other objectives reflecting will of the people expressed in the survey.
Councilmember Jacobson?
One question I have is on the addition to 6.2. And my understanding of the recreation research set strategy, the strategy was to get from where we were to a different point. But I didn't read it as being something that was around that governed everything that went on in the future necessarily. And because I'm not sure it's very easily applied that way, because there are undoubtedly going to be new and different things, and people's things change. So the adherence to the guidelines, from my perspective, is a little stricter than I think I'd be comfortable with when it got to the city council. That's obviously where we're starting, but where we finish, I think it may be something somewhat different, or I may have misunderstood the reset. Misunderstand the reset strategy, but anyway, that's my.
I think maybe one of you can help me out because you lived it. I think there are some components that are intended to live long, like what do we call it? The pricing pyramid. That's an ongoing concept. Maybe I need to work. Maybe I need to work on this a little bit. We're tired. Should we keep going?
Yeah, I think we keep going. But clearly there's things that can be tweaked in that one.
Okay, 6.4. This was the addition, Commissioner Cohen, of the words mental health. And to take out the list, that's the trend we've been by the way, this was a blend. This was a blend of a whole bunch of ideas. We need a statement like this somewhere in our objectives list. Got a little unwieldy, but I left it because it covers so many important points.
This is Don Cohen. I think that if you don't have some of those parenthetical categories, the regular reader might think that was purely physical.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that.
I agree.
I think everyone's about ready to crash, so we'll say okay, and we'll have another pass at this.
I think that's a good idea.
6.10, I use the word periodic to describe our frequency of like program evaluations. I think Commissioner Struck was concerned that sounded inconsistent. I was really just trying to say, it's not annual, but from time to time. I am totally open to a revision here. I didn't come up with one on the fly today. It could be taking out all this.
Yeah. Do we need to have all of that explained, or can we just have utilized data to inform program and service planning decisions?
Well, but you'd keep the idea of doing evaluations, right? So it could be conduct periodic evaluations of program offerings, utilize data to inform program and service planning decisions. Because you don't want to lose the evaluation piece, I don't think.
Did you have a revision somewhere, Rory, that I missed? Conduct
periodic evaluations of program offerings, period. Utilize data to inform program and service planning decisions.
Maybe, yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, we're so close. 6.11, this is facility scheduling. And the question was around, Commissioner Cohen, this is that equity word again. Just trying to find a way to say not everybody gets to dominate the field use, but this can probably be dismantled and
Yeah, this is Don Cohen. You see at the end of my comment that the idea of resident versus non-resident jumped out at me, but I wasn't sure if that was even what was part of on your mind.
Mhm.
I think what was on our mind is these facilities are limited. We generally have more demand than we have resource, and everyone has to share and play nice. Should I just write that?
Well, fairness and equity just, grabbed me. Not that I'm all, not all in favor of that. Is it cooperation, civility, or whatever? I don't know.
Right.
Commissioner Westberg, did you have a comment on this?
I did. It seemed like there were two ideas at play in this goal, the way it's written. One was the idea of using facilities, limited facilities, to the maximum extent possible, as efficiently as possible. And the other was this issue of fairness and scheduling so that everybody gets a crack at what's available. So I'm not sure whether that was the intent or whether the dominating idea was to develop and implement indoor and outdoor facility use and scheduling protocols based on fairness and equity and all of that.
What you just said was the intent. One is maximize use through scheduling and partnerships and all that good stuff. And the other one was make sure it's fair. Shared.
Well, maybe you could just say develop and implement indoor and outdoor facility use and scheduling protocols to maximize use and ensure fairness and equity fairness and equity and availability, supporting diverse and emerging uses, et cetera, et cetera.
So let me go high level since I didn't quite catch that. Are these two
Okay.
objectives? Do these need to be split into two objectives and then cleaned up?
No, I think you could incorporate it, both ideas in one by saying develop and implement indoor and outdoor facility use and scheduling protocols to maximize use, encourage partnerships, and promote fairness and equity of availability, or something like that.
Mhm.
Or all the rest, you can keep all the rest of the language you have there.
Mhm.
This is Don again. Jesse, give me a real fast example of an unfair or inequitable use of these facilities.
We don't have unfair use, but we're constantly asked, I need more time for my program or my team.
And Jesse, this is Ryan. I would say there are, when you think about the community center, you have some historical uses that have gone on for a long time, and individuals feel entitled to that time ongoingly. And it's not necessarily fair to any new organization or new user group that may want to come in. So, looking at this goal, that's sort of where my mind starts to go on not necessarily equal across the board access, but fair opportunity to access.
Pickleball comes to mind.
Excellent example.
Well, I like the concept of fair opportunity to whatever you said, Ryan, as opposed to fairness and equity, which, got me pulling out my pocket version of the United States Constitution in its previous form.
We should not have to reference the Constitution in reading this document. So how about this? Let Ryan and I take note of your comments and see if we can't smooth these out.
Okay.
Councilmember Jacobson?
One concern that I have that with this provision, with the fairness and equity in this thing and certain other things, and I'll go back and look at them, is that we don't put the city in an impossible position. What's equitable or fair to me, using the example of the historical uses of the community center, that may be very fair and equitable to me, may not be fair and equitable to somebody else. So how do you balance those, those demands? And when we start taking on, we as the city start taking on that obligation and get it define equity, and we don't define equity and fairness, I think we're opening a door to some problems that we really don't want to have. What we want to do is optimize the utilization of all the facilities we have for the greatest good for the greatest amount of people. And that's, some people are going to lose out. And that isn't equitable to them or fair to them maybe, but well, that's going to be the way it works, because we don't have an infinite inventory of things and places to use. So I think we have to think through that kind of problem, that we don't bestow on ourselves obligations that are very difficult to fulfill.
All right. I got a lot of just brain dump, and that is fantastic because we can use that to fix all that. Okay, these we're so close. Everyone hang on. 6.13 and 6.14. These were 2 building projects, and I think based on our previous conversation, we should take these out. They probably live in the CIP.
I agree.
Yep.
Do it.
Okay. Okay, 8, we're in administration now. 8.1, I again went and combined a whole bunch of themes. So you've got your welcoming, diverse, inclusive statement here. Not measurable, that Commissioner Struck, I think we talked about that. Does anybody want a revision there?
That's fine.
No, we're all right.
Does it this Don Cohen, does it really go here as opposed to back in one of those, earlier goals? I'm okay with the wording, but it's sort of like, this is a core principle,
Yeah.
It's not just an administrative or fiscal issue, but I'm okay with the wording.
I put it here because I couldn't figure out where else it fits, but I hear what you're saying. It's kind of an important statement. I'm happy to take a look at it, see if I come up with something brilliant.
Well, maybe it goes back in what would now be number 1, goal number 1. I don't know.
I will take a look at that.
This is Commissioner Westberg. I support that idea. It seems to me to fit better there.
Right. Oh, 8.2. Does this relate to the city's budget? So this is plan for and recommend sufficient resources. And I read this about 6 times today, Commissioner Struck. It probably is a budget statement. So I could get behind adding the words budget.
Yeah, this is Peter Struck. I mean, I'm kind of looking at this, and I went kind of back to, is this objective, understandable? And, I'm reading it now and forget the kind of the specific budget comment. It's just, somebody reads that, it's kind of like, what are you really saying here? It's kind of, because it's just got so much stuff in it. Okay, yeah. I guess as I kind of come to the conclusion, maybe it could be kind of written simpler, I guess, or more straightforward. I don't have any specific language right now, but it just doesn't seem very understandable to me.
Yeah. We went through a whole bunch of other city parks plans, and nearly all of them have a statement about this. And I think this is kind of your message up to the council. Like, we can't do any of this unless you fund it. So maybe I can compress this a little bit to a a statement about funding. You know, there's some key themes here.
Yeah,
Public investment. I'll just, again, I'm happy to take a look at that.
okay.
I know what these notes mean, even if they're vague. Okay. 8.3, the question was where we identify, we make a statement about alternative funding options, and we will identify alternative funding options, the dollar amount in the CIP. And this is
This is Commissioner Stark. I'm fine with the way it's written now, but given the response.
all right. Commissioner Stark, do not know what to do. Let me just move this along to one page here. I do not know what to do with this suggestion. Impact, so you're asking like, how often do you do update impact fees? Somewhere around every 6 to 10 years. Unless,
Excuse me, maybe that's what you just periodically review and update, e.g. 6 to 10 years. I mean, it just kind of gives the reader at least a kind of understanding of, what's happening here.
What's the time frame? Commissioner Markson?
Okay, I'm off mute. It was actually related to the previous row. Sorry, whatever the previous record was that we were talking about. This would just be like a reduced text suggestion that we have multiple points where we say use these other sources of funding to buy land, to, clean up the parks, or, improve the natural resources in a park. And maybe we can just say it once and we apply that. I mean, I think what we're saying is we do it anywhere we can, we would do that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, just something to consider.
I think that makes sense. Councilmember Jacobson?
With respect to to be sure I'm on the right target here. So, oh yeah, it's item number 37 on 8.4. I'm wondering if, or I respectfully suggest that ensuring that we're at market for these things would be the most appropriate way to put all this, rather than putting a time frame on it. For example, if Kirkland is charging $300 a night for a softball field and we're charging $150, then I think we're below market. We ought to go up. And
you're talking about just setting fees in general?
Yes, well, when I read this as periodic review and update park, fees, blah, 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 and then the comment was discuss impact fees are typically updated every 6 to 10 years. And I took impact to mean
all right,
not impact that we add up when there are more people or something like that, but okay, what's it worth?
Yeah, these are the actual park impact fees, and that methodology is not tied to market. It's tied to your capital facilities plan.
Okay.
I can make sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, I think this one's closer to being good to go. Okay. Good catch, Commissioner Cohen. I certainly didn't intend to write the ballot measure statement indicating that we'd be campaigning, just kind of how it read. This also is now, so I revised it to say, it's basically saying we will consider, well, you guys don't like the word consider, voter improved initiatives such as bond and levies. And there is an action plan here, which again, we can peel out and put somewhere else. It's related to the renewal of the parks maintenance and operations levy. So this probably needs to come out. It's a specific action item. But it's got to go somewhere in the plan because it's a pretty major work item that's coming up. Yes.
This Don Cohen, I can go either way with that. So if you want to delete that, that's okay with me.
I will say it's really important. So if you ever wanted to include something that's really important, this will be one of the items.
Well, why don't, this is Commissioner Westberg, why don't you make that statement the objective? Develop a recommendation for city council consideration to renew the levy. It's specific, but it's also, like you say, critically important.
Okay, we'll keep it for now. There's an objective around economic development. And I think the question from Commissioner Cohen was, Jesse, where on earth did this come from? There's nothing else here on economic development. It got dropped in because economic development is one of the top 4 goals of the council. I think this could if you want to keep it, it could possibly be rewritten. The idea is that, parks potentially drives economic activity, and we should be thoughtful about that as a staff. Look, things like special events happening in the town center drive economic activity. This isn't quite the right tone or approach. I can take another swing at it. If you want to just take it out entirely because he doesn't live here, that's a consideration as well.
Well, I'm okay with it being in here, but I think somebody reading this would understand it better if it even said in general, whatever it is, the economic development initiatives and other opportunities to support local businesses that have that support the nexus to I don't know, I just make it up, nexus to parks and recreation activities or something. I don't know. It looked to me like it was pulled out of something else and didn't relate.
I got it.
I kind of understand what you're saying now in your response.
I mean, I guess we'll say generally, as your city manager, I'm telling the staff, you got to think about this, right? We're doing a limited MI event. You got to be thinking about how we work with the businesses. So let me take a stab at this. I'll work with our economic development coordinator. I have some amazing news. This is your last one. This is, and I can't even see it now, Commissioner Struck, comment about bureaucracy. I do not like that word.
Yeah, and this is Peter Struck, and that's fine. I get that. I think as I look at the objective 8.9 there, I think maybe I would just use the first sentence and drop the second, and say, well, the feasibility of adding a dedicated staff position, that's really a recommendation. And I think what I was trying to get at is I think that, when I talk to community members, sometimes, they talk about, well, red tape and, I want to volunteer in the park and, I got to do this, I got to do that. And it's just like, why go through the brain damage kind of thing? So that was my comment, is I think we need to kind of look internally and say, how can we streamline the process, et cetera, et cetera. And that's that. I'll leave it at that.
I also want to go back and look at the other volunteer goal and see if we're not duplicating our objectives. All right, I hear you. Just trying to torture you, Commissioner Struck. All right, that's out of my matrix, unless anybody dares bring something else up. Okay, well, I have some good news and bad news. The bad news is Steve had a few more things to talk to you about with the public meeting. The good news is Ryan's told me he can email you his staff report, and I can also email you kind of the next steps piece about the capital facilities project to save time. But we do need to talk to you as quickly as we can about the September 28th meeting. Is that okay? I will stop sharing. Sorry about that. Steve, you have 30 seconds.
Yes, thank you. I will now share my screen to get it back to that PowerPoint, just to have a tool to walk you through what we're thinking about for the virtual public meeting and get your feedback on some questions we might want to pose to the public. So once again, let me just jump forward here. Okay, can I get a head nod, making sure that's working? Okay. All right, great. So like with the first virtual public meeting, the second virtual public meeting that we're prepping that will occur toward the end of September, we'll use Zoom as the platform. It'll be structured in a similar fashion. I just want to walk you through what we're thinking in terms of structure and agenda, and then give you some specifics about some polling questions and some breakout discussions that we're chewing on at the staff level and the project team level to see how we can get the most out of this session with the public. So in terms of the agenda, it's on screen. So the start time would be 5:30. I'd go for about an hour and a half, a little bit shorter than the first one we did. And but like the first one, we will start with a presentation, and Jesse will likely open it. I will lead the presentation. The presentation will build on what we've done and learned to date. So taking the information from the other public meeting, taking information from the survey that will have recently closed, framing it around a few themes, specifically waterfront and beaches, playgrounds, and a couple others that I'll talk to in a second. But also during that presentation, intersperse some polling questions just to kind of break it up, keep it a little more lively. So after about a half hour of that, we'll focus toward smaller group breakout sessions. So like with the first public meeting, we'll ask people to register in advance so we have an idea of how many folks might be interested in participating, so we can make sure we have staff resources to conduct the breakout sessions. And the breakouts will be a little larger than the last time, just to be a little more efficient with staff resources and to potentially have a more dynamic discussion and avoid any attrition that happens as people potentially drop out. Then there'd be a real quick reporting back after all of the breakout sessions are done, have a little open Q&A if there's any questions from the audience, and then final remarks. So in terms of themes that we're thinking about, again, a quick recap on where we are in the project, where we're going with the project, but then focusing towards some of the bigger issues that we've heard come up during the course of the project, such as the cost and impact and need for waterfront or beach infrastructure renovations or upgrades. Like we've already talked through tonight's discussion about goals, the needs for playground renovation and planning around that. And then the bigger issue of how do you balance the needs of your existing system with its existing infrastructure with the needs and interests of changing recreation opportunities, activities, or wants. So that's kind of where we're going. And through that, we'll use, again, some storylines that talk about what's happening, what's on the ground, and images and the like, but then intersperse some polling questions. So I've got some sample polling questions. I'm going to just take a quick read, and then I'm curious to get your reaction as to whether you think they're appropriate, whether they need to be reworded or tweaked or even dropped. So there's two polling questions here related to waterfront beach improvements. First one is about docks being challenging to repair or replace due to cost and permitting. They get more difficult to replace as conditions deteriorate, and it's a prioritization question of how important is it to prioritize dock repair and replacement, just kind of a general scale, 1 to 5, very important, down to not important, not sure. And this is, again, something we would weave in to the introduction about the need for water-oriented improvements and infrastructure, just to kind of gauge where people are. Any reactions? Commissioner Struck, I see a hand.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. So my thought would be I'll what I call personalize it. So I would say at the end there, with that said, how important is to prioritize dock repair and replacement, parentheses, or such as at Luther Burbank, or, whatever. I think, again, giving people kind of, so they can have a mental view of, okay, oh yeah, those are the kinds of things we're talking about, as opposed to just keeping it kind of more abstract.
Good feedback. Any other reactions on this one?
I was going to
Yes.
say the reason this is dropped in here, and if you don't think it's helpful to you, then we'll take it out, is these dock projects are mega millions, and we're trying to, if we're going to try to get some of these done quicker, we're going to have to figure out how to fund them, and our capital fund may not be able to sustain them getting done in the time they need to get done. So that's why we dropped this one in.
And there is a follow-on question that I'll put on screen now. And maybe between the two, you might like one better than the other, or you might feel the need for both. So the second version is, again, several waterfront structures and docks need to be upgraded or replaced. These are expensive with long permitting timelines. How should we prioritize waterfront projects with other improvements at existing parks? And it's a different set of choices. It's about, in the first case, replacing all the docks as a priority, or replacing only the worst ones first and leaving some reserve so you could do some other projects, or dock replacement's not a priority, focus on the other needs of the system. So, or another. So, and the other would be captured through the chat function of Zoom. So reactions, takeaways on a question like this.
I will say, commissioners, I want you to ask yourself, do these questions matter to you? Because I know you understand the dock projects. If you don't feel like these are important to ask at this point, we could even drop them both.
Commissioner
I like both the questions. I think on this one, somehow the first and second bullet, I think, would be difficult for someone to answer. Like, there's so many other questions that I would need to know what I think. Because it seems, I mean, there's a huge cost component, but I think there's also, and we're running up against a timeline, which is not mentioned in the polling question, right? Isn't there a significant time component that?
Yeah, Luther Burbanks, we're already addressing Luther Burbank Park. Clark Beach and Groveland also are going to need some updating as well.
So it's kind of, isn't it like an update it or lose it?
Yeah, with Luther Burbank, it is. Yeah.
Okay.
And probably Clark Beach with the docks there as well, and the swimming area.
And some of that context would come through as part of the presentation piece that leads up to the polling questions as well, just for reference.
Oh, okay.
Commissioner Struck?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the second question, again, how should we prioritize waterfront projects with other improvements at existing parks? Well, again, you're going to get 10 people and they're all going to think 10 different things for these other improvements. And so I guess I'm not really sure when you get the responses back, how helpful they're going to be. I like the first question better, and this one I would probably drop.
Can you show us the first one again, Steve, please?
Yep. There you go.
I agree with Peter, this Don Cohen.
It's a little more straightforward.
Commissioner Westberg?
Yeah, my comment on question 2 was it forces a simple binary choice in what is in fact a very complicated issue, because you have, as Sarah mentioned, there's timing issues, there's environmental issues, there's safety issues, all of which weigh on the question of when you replace a dock, as opposed to just saying, well, are docks more important than playgrounds? Well, most people are probably going to say no, they're not. So I agree. I think we should probably unless we could rephrase this question somehow to bring in bring in some of that complexity of the choice, I would say we don't use this.
And that's a
Question too.
And if I could build on that, is there a way you would ask, or is there something you want to learn from the public through this upcoming meeting that helps guide your decisions about what will be in that project list and how things get shuffled around?
Mhm. I really liked Peter's suggestion about making question 1 more specific and like having a specific example in it. I think that that's helpful instead of just vaguely saying docks. Because if people aren't familiar with the different docks, you know, at Luther Burbank and at Groveland and at Clark Beach, they could just be thinking of a simple, you know, little pier that one person can walk out on that you tie your rowboat to, you know. They're not appreciating the complexity of what we're looking at.
Steve, given the time, I think we should keep.
All right. So as you see these, if other ideas come to mind, feel free to email Jesse directly and we'll work on it as a project team. A couple other set of polling questions, transitioning focus on playground replacements. So here, how should the city balance playground replacements for the needs of users? And in this case, what would lead up to this would be a series of image boards, basically, to show that there's different styles of play out there. So today in Mercer Island, you've got a system that's very traditional with, you know, post and platform structures and, you know, slides and things. But, you know, there's other equipment out there that's more kinetic, where you use your body to move around, or nature play, or equipment that incorporates adult fitness, or all inclusive, all ages, all abilities equipment. So the question is there a group or a style of activity that should be a focus for consideration for playground replacement? So that then is the list. And I'll let you just take a quick look through that.
Commissioner Cohen?
Yeah, this is Don Cohen. Is the 4th bullet there supposed to include people of, you know, who have more limited abilities, whether they're physical or mental? Because yes. I don't read it that way. To me, that's all -age inclusive, like all ages. So maybe, I don't know how to revise it. Maybe it's all age and ability inclusive play or something like that.
Okay.
Because I think we want to capture that concept, given what Paul and Ryan and the rest of you have gone through with the playground at Mercerdale.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other reactions? Good question, bad question, helpful, not helpful?
Commissioner Markson?
I like the question. I don't know if this would be way too complicated, but if you were to restructure it, like the city has 10 playgrounds, if you had to choose which of these elements, you know, would all 10 be young children? Would 5 out of 10 be, you know what I mean? Like, so then you can kind of get a feel, like it's almost like a relative ranked voting, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Well, most people wanted 8 out of 10 to be for young kids.
Mm-hmm.
And only, I don't know, that's probably too complicated for polling, but I think it's an important question. Maybe I'm just questioning how people will, seems like a lot of people would answer all of them. I don't know. I would have a hard time answering this question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we talked about that internally, that it likely would skew toward people just selecting all, but we'll give some more consideration to it. Let me show you what the next one is with regard to playgrounds. And this one is more in alignment with what we talked about during the goals section on a playground replacement plan. So again, this will have the lead in of providing that information about the fact that today's equipment is older, aging out, will likely need to be replaced in, you know, a similar time frame going forward. What does that mean? And the question is, should there be a system-wide plan to think about how how these playgrounds get replaced over time. And it's just, again, very support to not support.
Why ask this? I think it's, and I've gone back and forth about whether or not this should be a polling question or not, but playgrounds can be very personal to a neighborhood. So even though they're in a community park that serves the whole island, if you live there, you care a lot about what goes there. So you got to get people thinking about, like, I'm going to agree to do this system-wide playground plan, or nope, I want you guys to plan playground by playground. And I ask you, commissioners, is this an important question for you because you're in the position of getting ready to make a recommendation to the council on this approach? And if it is helpful, we'll keep it in.
Councilmember Jacobson?
I would suggest that polling question 4 be number 3 and number 3, number 4, to shape the way that people thinking approaches these issues.
Feedback. Okay. Other comments? Otherwise, I'll just move forward to the next one. Commissioner Westberg?
Yeah, I agree with Jake's comment, and with regard to Jesse's explanation on this one, I'm not sure that a lot of people, unless would grasp that the subtlety of that difference, unless they're given a lot of information ahead of time. And so I'm not sure what this tells us, this particular question, or that it's going to tell us something that we can really use. But, you know, I'm certainly willing to keep it in there.
Commissioner Struck?
Yeah, I kind of have been kind of pondering at number 4 here as well. And I guess I would concur with Commissioner Westberg's comments that I'm just not sure that people are going to really kind of understand it. And what do we get from it, kind of thing. So.
Commissioner Cohen?
Don Cohen, Steve or Jesse, if you were going to have at the end of this system-wide playground plan, comma, as opposed to what would your next phrase be that would help somebody reading this understand it? You know, it was sort of what Jesse said a minute ago, but that's too long.
Right. It would be something around, planning for each playground, individually. So I'm too tired to come up with the right words. It's like a playground by playground planning approach versus a system-wide approach. It takes more time and it costs more for us to go playground by playground, which is why the staff are kicking around the idea with all of you of this system-wide plan. But again, I ask, is this important for you, commissioners, and thinking about your recommendation of the council to ask this question at this public meeting? And if the answer is no, you've got a grasp of it, we'll take it out.
Commissioner Cohen, did you have something to add?
Nope, sorry.
Okay. Councilmember Jacobson?
Well, I can tell you, and this isn't a big secret, when you bring to the city council what you want to do with the playground, I think one of the first things out of somebody's mouth is, what's your system-wide plan gonna be? So, get ready to answer that question is what I'm saying, because I think that is the only way to do this, consistent with what our city manager just said, is that we're not, there are some real financial consequences as to how we go about this. So may not be necessary at all.
I'm leaning towards taking it out, but if anyone wakes up tomorrow morning and has a different thought, why don't you shoot me a message?
Yeah, I sort of feel like we should just be doing this, and why are we asking people to try and nuance on something that maybe they don't have the background information? Sarah is agreeing with that. Commissioner Westberg?
Well, I would just say we do have it as one of our objectives. So the one little perhaps piece of value in asking this question would be if somehow the feedback from the community is totally contrary to what's in our what's in our objective, and that may prompt some rethinking. But as Council Member Jacobson said, this is what the council would expect too. They'd expect a systematic approach. So I'm leaning toward taking it.
I think for our purposes, we'll just take it out from this one. And I think we have 2 more to look at before the breakout discussions. So again, the next 2 revolve around specialized uses or fitting in newer uses that may displace or replace existing amenities. So in this case, it's setup is about pickleball, and pickleball being an emerging high priority sport, and which of the following represents your position on expanding opportunities for pickleball. And basically the options include adding pickleball to tennis courts to make them multi-purpose, decommissioning some tennis courts to make them dedicated pickleball, adding new pickleball, and adding new pickleball only if new land is acquired. So trying to see where people might be, again, in starting to frame that discussion that'll be in the breakout about balancing new demands with existing uses. Reaction?
Commissioner Cohen?
Don Cohen, consistent with a change that we made in the document earlier, I would say the first one ought to be add pickleball lines to some existing tennis courts, unless you're actually asking, do you want them done on all of them?
That's what I was thinking too.
That was my first comment. The second one is, to me, maybe it's just because I'm not a pickleball player, is that the first sentence seems to be kind of a push statement, referring to it as an emerging as a high priority in the pros planning process. That's certainly true from a vocal group. Some people probably believe that, like Sue Stewart commented on the bicycle people, that they are a very vocal, well-organized group, but maybe it isn't as widespread. I don't really know, but Steve and staff, I guess, believe that first statement is important to say that way.
We can certainly reword that to be less leading.
Yeah, I wrote that question, and the only reason I added that sentence in, I think we could probably just take the whole first sentence out, is because it is coming up as one of your higher priorities. And so the question that then we have to answer is, well, what do we do about it? And some dedicated pickleballers say we want dedicated courts, and then that gets us into this question of, okay, where, how? So that's how we ended up with this multi-layered question. It's that balancing uses thing.
No, I think it's a good question to ask.
All right, well, we can take that first sentence out or make it less leading. Add the word some.
Yeah, you could say something like it's a high area of interest, or
oh yeah, okay.
Something like that without inserting priority in there.
Okay. We'll do.
All right.
And then I think this is the last of the polling questions. So again, this one's framed around new versus existing. So if funding for new special facilities is recommended, how should they be sited? So should they be accommodated at existing popular accessible parks, added in areas where they're currently underserved by active play areas, added if other amenities are decommissioned, or added if other land is acquired? So similar framing as with the pickleball in terms of choices, but this is more global in terms of the type of uses that might be considered.
Commissioner Westberg, did you have a comment or? Okay.
So why is this here? I think you all are going to be pressed to try to figure this out in the plan. This is what we were talking about earlier. This, how do we fit new amenities, the impervious surface conversation? We picked up just the new special use facilities topic because it's a little easier to understand.
Now, I'd be interested to see what the answers are for this one.
Any other reactions?
Commissioner Markson?
I think I guess my first impression is it's so general, like my answer would depend on maybe what facility it is and what, I don't know, there's almost too many factors that come into my head about answering the question to just be able to pick one. But I mean, if you have to pick one, it's probably going to at least give you some idea of what people think. Like if they're just not open to anything, or, you know, how open they are, the public is to change, I guess, kind of what this is asking, or what they require to.
One thing that we contemplated is it could be a two-part question, right? The first two bullets are really about where they go. Do they go in popular parks already, or do you try to balance? And then those last two bullets they only get added if something's decommissioned, or, well, no, I guess that doesn't work. Never mind. I take all that back. I'm tired.
Commissioner Struck?
Yeah, as the city manager said, I mean, this kind of goes back to our earlier discussion, the comment that I made about the taking. I mean, there's no consequence. It says, oh, well, you know, we can put up this stuff, you know, wherever and so forth. I mean, if you said, you know, new uses would require the, you know, cutting down of 100 trees, mature trees or something like that, people would say, oh, well, wait a minute, maybe that isn't such, you know, so that's, I think that we're kind of creating kind of a false choice here is my point.
Councilmember Jacobson?
I recommend you add the phrase in front of spray parks to say, for example, so that people don't think that this is exclusive.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
So this is helpful feedback, and we'll bring this back to the team and try to digest this a little bit more. But also these questions, these last two in particular, are intended to lead into the breakout session. And before I go any further, Commissioner Westberg, did you have an additional comment?
I did, and I'm sorry, I know it's late, but I wondered if there was any thought or discussion given to having a polling question about trails. Trails and walking were in the first survey were shown to be one of the most popular activities on the island, and the objectives speak to enhancing trail connectivity and developing trails in open space areas that currently have none. So I'm just wondering, to me, it would be helpful to get some kind of a read, and I don't have the wording for a question right now, but I can think about it and send you something about trails and connectivity and that sort of thing.
Yeah, if you can offer a thought on what you want to learn or what you want to hear about trails. Again, the survey data shows that there's strong interest for sure, but then what would be the follow-on question? So give some additional thought to that and share an email with Jesse. And then just for sake of time, I'm just going to move forward. So again, the polling questions, those last two were intended to gear up a discussion that would be, again, small group breakout discussions through Zoom, where out of a 30-minute period, I'm suggesting we break it up into two chunks. One 20-minute piece to talk about this balancing act between existing and new recreational uses. So again, springboarding on the two related to pickleball and those new special uses. So it's more of a discussion. So it would, there'd be some context to set the stage, but it'd be the opportunity for people to talk to each other. So we can explore through staff facilitation, you know, what are those important nuances or factors that we should be paying attention to that might help guide how projects get prioritized, or policy language that might get revised. So this is in a way we're thinking about it, and I'm just looking for reactions to whether this seems to make sense, whether you'd offer us or suggest we go in a different direction. Any thoughts?
Commissioner Cohen?
Don Cohen, I'm okay with the language which you had put in the staff report pretty much the same way, but Just in the whoever conducts that breakout thing, I mean, we're not just talking about spray parks or pickleball. We're talking, for example, the trail from Luther Burbank down to the fishing pier, you know, and the issue about that some people have commented on whether it will diminish the character and decrease the sustainability if it's either gravel or asphalt or whatever it may be. So we need to be as broad as possible on this because I think it is very important, potentially very divisive.
One thing that I wanted to say was with the breakout rooms at in the last session, they stayed the same people each time. And so like the council members were in the same group each time with the same group of people. And so if there are going to be council members there, it would be nice if they sort of were able to float or like go to a couple of different breakout rooms to hear other opinions instead of having the same group each time.
We are only going, we had a time management problem last time and the meeting was long. So I think we're just going into one breakout room.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
One breakout room, 2 discussions.
Got it. Okay.
They would flow into the other. Any other reactions on how to approach this issue? Or suggestions even?
I guess the one thing I want to say, and please don't shoot the messenger, I just have to bring this up, is I'm going to use spray park as an example. Part of the question I have is, I think we're hearing from a lot of people about protecting green space, but what if the community says, no, we should be able to, I want a spray park. It should be cited. I mean, I think that's what we're trying to get to. I guess what I'm saying is I don't want to go in with the assumption that it's protect parks green space at all costs. And I'm not trying to evoke a strong opinion. What I'm worried about is there's some pretty high interest right now in new facilities, and we're trying to figure out how do we, what's the policy guidance on how we address those requests? Is it you have to decommission something else, no net loss of green space? Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping we can all agree to push on this a little bit and be open to the feedback. I know there's strong opinions on this, believe me. That didn't make sense because it's late. I will try to repackage my thoughts.
That's what you need those benevolent entities for, is to offer the city $25 million to put in top of the line spray park and whatever else you put in there, cone spinners, etc.
Yeah. Alternatively, like we need to get some clarity on this because the staff are getting pounded right now on particularly the bike skills area. So, some definition to the policies will really help.
Yeah. All right, let's move on.
So, last one, and this one builds on, so the second half or second part of the breakout session, singular session, would be, again, coming back to the notion of play area upgrades, to maybe dive a little deeper into what people might be thinking about how to balance or provide for different types of play experiences across the island. So it's not all maybe structured play, or it's different kinds of structured play. So just to dive a little deeper into that. Commissioner Cohen?
Don Cohen. Again, as before, under all ages play, consider putting all ages and abilities or something like that.
Got it.
Commissioner Struck.
Thank you. So, and maybe this kind of goes back to the presentation piece, but I'm just curious if we know kind of what the trends are nationally. Again, not that we have to follow them necessarily, but I'm just curious. I mean, are we seeing, park and recreation groups kind of moving to this more diverse, natural play, all ages play, mixed approach, and so forth? Or
yeah, generally.
I guess maybe the way to put it is, what can we glean from what others have done?
Yeah, it's a good question. And again, the setup on the playground section will have a number of photo images to kind of evoke what other groups are doing, other agencies are doing, to kind of paint the picture on what's potential. Because
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
if you're not familiar, you might not know how to even think about it. So we'll provide some imagery toward that. So I know it's late. That wraps up the breakout sessions. Again, if you have additional feedback or comments or questions on how to approach this public meeting, let us know. If there's anything else you think we should be trying to glean from the public during the public meeting, different topics to address like trails, again, just let us know. We've got a couple of weeks to finalize everything. And the upside is, since this is basically a PowerPoint presentation, we can make changes pretty late in the day. With that, I'll turn it back to Jesse and turn off my screen if there's anything I missed on.
Actually, Steve, I think I have one more slide and it's going to be a fast one.
Yep, you're right. There you go.
So your October meeting, I understand Ryan might be talking to you about an alternative date. We're going to go over the survey results. We're going to look at the capital facilities plan, which is your long plan. We're going to start looking at the draft 6-year CIP. That's your projects that get funded. And we're also planning to hand off a big chunk of the front end chapters. We won't need feedback at the next meeting, but we'll get them off to you so we can start. You can start sending us the feedback. And I think, is that the last slide?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so I am going to hand it over to Ryan with a quick commission planning and meeting schedule update.
Thank you, Chair. This will only take about 45 minutes or so, but good. You guys are still smiling. I appreciate that. No, Jesse just covered it.
That was a grimace.
It was a mixed bag for sure. Jesse did just cover it. You know, we do have a need for an additional meeting in October. I will reach out to the commission. We're looking at the date October 14th, so I will ping all of you and find out if that's something that could work. As Jesse mentioned, that would be to cover the survey results, capital facilities priorities, and 6-year CIP. Give us an additional meeting to focus specifically on those items. And then that first October meeting, which is October 7th, we committed to bringing the Parks and Recreation Commission the staffing plan for 2022, as well as a budget preview ahead of going to City Council later in October. So that's a real priority that we want to get in front of the commission and get a review there. And then also we have the 2 policy elements of the facility use and allocation policy, and then the differential pricing policy as well. So some work to work through those first 2 weeks of October, but I hate to bring it to you late in the game like this, but we kind of stacked up some things and we do have some deadlines to hit. So I will reach out to all of you and kind of get an idea if that is those are dates that will work for everybody. So and then with that, I will say for the department report that usually comes, I will email that out to everyone tomorrow, and happy to answer any questions that come up after reviewing those updates and whatnot. But thank you.
City Council Member Jacobson, you have a comment?
Just one quick comment. First of all, is to thank all of you for the time and effort you put into these things. The work you're doing is very important. It's also very difficult. And the fun really begins when we on the City Council have to reconcile the conflicting interests and particularly some of those kinds of things such as impervious surface and everything are going to be, very contentious items. But the work that you've done, I think, is amazing. And I, for one, really appreciate it. And I'm not sure I can translate all the wise things you've done to my City Council people, let alone have them believe it, but my fellow council people. But at any rate, great work. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, so Ryan's going to email out the department report. And I think we're just going to skip for tonight the commissioner report. Because I think we're done. But yeah, thank you to everybody, especially, well, to all of us. This is a long meeting, and I can only imagine all of the work that went into putting all of that information together for us to go over it. And Paul, it's not usually this long, so please do not get discouraged by this meeting.
Not at all. Not at all.
Okay, so our next regular Parks and Recreation Commission meeting is going to be October 7th, 2021 at 5:30 p.m. The time now is 9:30 and the meeting is adjourned. However, as a reminder to commissioners, please stay seated until the city staff has terminated the Zoom broadcast. Good evening and stay safe and healthy.
Thanks, everybody. I'm going to stop the recording now and end the meeting. Have a good night.